Chapter 172. As a young master, the previous Raito didn't study much since he was young. He couldn't even recognize all 28 English letters. He was only one step away from being illiterate. Although his soul was transmigrated, the Raito after transmigrating was even less interested in high school level studies. After all, he knew that in 2 years this broken island would sink. Who would care about how many points he got on the exam? He could just deal with it. However, the colored glaze obviously didn't know about Raito's situation, so she didn't think this idiot would be this bad. After reading Raito's exam, the colored glaze pondered for a long time before carefully asking, "Did you do these exam papers seriously? Or did you just write them casually? I forgot. Anyway, I slept most of the time during the exam. So did you write it seriously?" "I wrote my name seriously. I'm quite confident in writing my name." Suddenly, Raito proudly puffed out his chest and put on a dignified and upright posture. "For a high school student, I don't think this is much of an honor. How did you get into this school before?" Feeling his inexplicable confidence, the colored glaze could only helplessly cover her face. She originally thought that Raito was able to get into the Dory First High School because he had done some hard work. Now it seemed like he didn't even have the ability to reach the level of an elementary school student. "That year's entrance exam. I think I threatened the person next to me to write the answers. Other than my name, I didn't write anything else. Is the invigilator useless? Why didn't he do anything? It's probably because I've communicated with him beforehand." "Communicated? How did you communicate? Did you bribe him?" "I didn't bribe him. I just told him that if he dared to interfere, he should be careful when walking at night after school to avoid being hacked to death. Of course, that was wrong, but I won't do it again. As expected of a bastard. How did I get so close to this guy? But he seems to be much better now." Hearing this, colored glaze carefully looked at Raito, who had a strange expression on his face. Although Raito had indeed done such a thing before, colored glaze felt that he wasn't someone who would do such a thing now. It was as if after the colored glaze kidnapping incident, Raito had completely changed. In the past, Raito was indeed a scumbag who would threaten his deskmate to help him write the test papers. He also threatened the invigilator to not interfere or else he would be hacked to death. However, the current Raito was not that kind of person. When he encountered problems during exams, he would only look for someone to help him with his grades. He would not think of those unorthodox methods. However, this was to be expected. After all, the previous Raito and the current Raito only had the same body, but their souls were two completely different people. The previous Raito Kiri was a scumbag villain, so it was normal for him to do all kinds of hooligan acts. He even thought that the colored glaze was definitely a scumbag who deserved to be thrown out to feed the fish. Therefore, colored glaze was actually quite happy with the current extreme Dao young master who did not hesitate to ask her for help instead of choosing to walk the unorthodox path. "Oh right." At this time, Raito suddenly reached out and patted his head. He smiled and said to colored glaze, "I can't threaten others to help me write the test papers or threaten the invigilator, but stealing the test papers shouldn't be a problem, right?" In Raito's view, threatening normal people was not right. However, stealing the test papers to prepare the answers in advance and copying them during the exam was fine. This was Raito, a man with a flexible moral bottom line. "Fine. Let's pretend I didn't think of anything just now." Seeing Raito, who suddenly thought of stealing the test papers and laughed heartily, colored glaze immediately threw the thought of "I kind of like him" into the trash can. She looked at him with eyes full of contempt. Of course, Raito did not plan to pay attention to colored glaze's contempt. After all, in his view, he was only going to steal the test papers and would not hurt anyone. Was there anything that he could not do? Definitely not. What? This kind of action affected the fairness of the exam? Please, saying this to her extreme Dao young master who killed hundreds of people? Would he even care about this? Therefore, Raito quietly sneaked into the staff room of Kyoto First High School on the night of the 4th day. For an old fox like him who once sneaked into the heavily guarded Tokyo Emperor Hotel, a mere high school staff room was not much more difficult than his own backyard. He's here with the lockpick. Around midnight, Raito wore a black tight suit that he usually wore to rob hooligans. After climbing over the school wall, he swaggered in. Arriving at the door of the staff room that he investigated beforehand, Raito took out the hooligan lockpick that he bought from the mall and opened the door. He took 2 steps into the room and locked the door from the inside. The staff room was quiet in the middle of the night, not a single sound could be heard. Raito walked with almost inaudible demonic steps towards the depths of the staff room. He walked towards the safe that was locked with a large pile of unopened test papers. According to Raito's investigation, Kyoto First High School was the most famous high school in Tokyo, so the exam supervision here was quite strict. All the test papers were created using a standalone computer that was not connected to the internet. After creating the test papers, they were printed on the spot in their own printing room. After printing, they were stored in the safe. As for the password of the safe, only a few high-level school leaders knew about it. This arrangement naturally minimized the possibility of the test papers being leaked. But for Raito, obtaining the password was not a very complicated matter. After all, he had Sensible, who was an omnipotent helper. Through monitoring the phones and computers of the school leaders, Sensible had intercepted the password of the safe yesterday. It seemed that one of the vice principals was afraid that he would forget and recorded it in a memo on his phone. Just like this, Raito quietly walked over to the safe. He bent down and was about to twist the password lock to take out the test papers inside. Tap, tap, tap. But at this moment, 2 sets of footsteps came from outside the staff room. Moreover, it was the kind that was coming towards him. I was discovered. No way. Generally speaking, it was unlikely that someone would come to the staff room to work in the middle of the night. So when Raito heard the footsteps, he immediately frowned. His whole body slid to the side and hid under the table not far away. Koala, creak, accompanied by the sound of the key turning and the slight sound of the door being pushed open, the 2 figures, one old and one young, quietly walked in. Because the person walking in front was holding a small lantern, Raito, who was hiding in the dark, could clearly see their appearance. The balding middle-aged man walking in front was wearing a suit and had a timid look. Raito remembered that he seemed to be the vice principal of Kyoto First High School because his balding head was quite conspicuous. The young man behind was about the same age as Raito. His handsome face was full of arrogance and an overbearing expression. It was obvious that he was not a good person. When the vice principal brought the young man to the place where the safe was placed, he could not help but turn his head and ask, "That, young Master Wada? Do you really want to do this?" From his tone, the vice principal seemed to have a lot of respect for the young man behind him. It was obvious that the young Master Wada had an extraordinary background. "Nonsense, if I ask you to open it, then open it. Isn't it just a few broken test papers? Just take it out. But if this test paper is leaked out, old man, if I don't get full marks on tomorrow's test and can't use this score to ask for praise from my aunt, guess what will happen to you?" When he said the word aunt, the corner of Wada's mouth raised. He reached out and patted the vice principal's bald head. It was as if he did not see him as a person at all. Sigh. There was no other way. Although the vice principal was obviously not willing to help this guy steal the test papers, the situation was better than him. He could only twist the password lock and slowly find the test papers inside. Oh, so they were in the same profession. At this moment, Raito knew why this young Master Wada came here. It seemed like he came for the test papers. But it was obvious that his style of doing things was much more arrogant than Raito. He actually threatened the vice principal to steal the test papers for him. What kind of situation was this? Little Hatien. Aunt. Could it be that this guy's aunt was some important person? After hearing this name, Longdo quietly picked up his phone, gently typed in this surname on his phone, and began to search for it. In this era of information explosion, if young Master Wada's aunt was really something, then it should not be hard to find her on the phone. Found it. The moment Raito typed in the surname Wada, the first person that popped up on the search page was someone related to this young master. The important person in the first row of the Wada surname was called Wada Ya. She was the wife of the 126th emperor, Emperor Wu De. She was the current empress. And this Wada Ya's father, Wada Heng, was the current permanent representative of the United Nations and the chief judge of the International Court of Justice. She also had a nephew called Wada Wada. He should be the one who threatened the vice principal to steal the test papers. So that's why. I was wondering why he was so arrogant. So he is a relative of the emperor. Seeing the vice principal nervously take out the test papers one by one and give them to young Master Wada, Raito could not help but sneer. Indeed, young Master Wada's family background could be said to be a real noble family. His family had been in politics for many years and was related to the royal family by marriage. Whether it was background or reputation, they were all very good. But although this guy was arrogant and despotic, as long as he did not provoke Raito, he could not be bothered with this kind of person. He simply hid at the side and did not make a sound, silently waiting for these two guys to leave. Who knew that when Wada received the test papers, he could not help but curse. F***CK Raito Kiri. If it was not for that scum, I would not have to waste time. P2e. Chapter 173. What? Why did he suddenly bring me along? Originally, Raito was still lying on the side, waiting for these two guys to leave before stealing the test papers. However, he did not expect to hear his name from Kawata Tamaki's mouth. What's more, this guy didn't even say anything nice. Instead, he directly scolded him. The most important thing was that Kawata Tamaki's theft of the test papers seemed to have something to do with Raito. It was as if Raito was not there, he would not have to steal the test papers. What was going on? After hearing this, Raito was suddenly puzzled. But he didn't have to think about it anymore, because the young master had very honestly told him the reason why he hated Long Do, and he even brought another person along with him. And that Yunyang in Tsukujiri as well. She usually doesn't have any reaction to me, but she actually got so close to that delinquent. She's simply a brainless, big-breasted bitch with no eyes. It was as if he didn't feel satisfied after scolding senior sister Yunyang, so he started scolding her as well. Hearing this, Long Do clenched his fists, but he quickly realized why Konoha and Tanaki were talking so much about this and that. Obviously, Kawata Tamaki should have pursued Yunyang. After all, Yunyang was so beautiful and charming. It would be unrealistic if there were not many people in the school who had thoughts about her. However, before meeting Raito, Yunyang maintained a very polite distance from all the boys. She absolutely did not give anyone any chance to get close to her, including Kawata Tamaki, a relative of the emperor. Although Kawata Tamaki was very angry about this, Yunyang's identity and family background were different from ordinary people. Even if he was a relative of the emperor and a political family, he could not do anything to her. He could only pretend to be carefree and forget about this matter. But not long after Kawata Tamaki forgot about this matter, there was a rumor that Yunyang and Raito Kiri were having an affair. Even the scene of them walking into the campus side by side was taken and posted on the internet. It could be said that these were not rumors, but irrefutable evidence. From the photo, even if Yunyang and Raito were not in a relationship, they were at least closer than ordinary friends. In other words, Yunyang did not reject this man. After learning about this, Kawatanaki was so angry that he smashed his phone on the spot. Are you kidding me? I'm a member of the royal family, and you don't have any reaction at all. Instead, you're with a hoodlum. Aren't you looking down on me? Am I not as good as Raito Kiri, that stinky dog? As the saying goes, don't worry about scarcity, but worry about inequality. If everyone could not pursue Yunyang, then forget it. There was nothing wrong with being a flower on a high mountain. Just let Yunyang quietly become the goddess in everyone's heart. But the problem was that others could not pursue her, but Raito, that stinky hoodlum, could. Didn't this mean that the goddess in Kawata Tamaki's heart had been taken by the blonde? Who would be able to tolerate this? In Kawata Tamaki's view, the Kyoto in Japan was a group of people who were used by politicians like him. They were a group of creatures that could be thrown away after using them. They were creatures on the same level as watchdogs. Now, the young master of the Rulon group actually dared to steal the woman he liked, and he really did. How could he swallow this if he did not kill him? Therefore, Kawata Tamaki found his aunt, the current Empress Kawata Tamaki, and hoped that she could use her connections to deal with the Rulone group. At least, she could throw Raito into prison to pick up soap. However, the shrewd and capable aunt helplessly replied, "Tamaki, you're not young anymore. You're always thinking about those messy things. How are you going to inherit the family business in the future? Who said that I'm always thinking about your messy things? I don't know how good my grades are. Inheriting the family business will definitely not be a problem. Alright then. When I was in the Dory First High School, I scored full marks in all subjects. If you can reach my level in the next exam, then you can do whatever you want with that hoodlum. Full marks in all subjects. No problem, it's not difficult at all." Therefore, after Kawata Tamaki gave a military order in front of his aunt, he turned around and began to threaten the vice principal to steal the exam papers. After all, he didn't look like someone who usually studied. How could he possibly get full marks in all subjects? Therefore, he could only use some unorthodox means. However, just as Kawata Tamaki was about to leave after stealing the exam papers, a dark figure of justice emerged from behind a table not far away. "Little bastard, you're on the wrong path." Looking at the two figures leaving, Raito narrowed his eyes and quietly followed them out. If Kawata Tamaki only scolded Raito, then it didn't matter how much he scolded. Raito didn't care about this little master's attitude. But the problem was that he also scolded Yunyang, which made Raito feel very uncomfortable. "It's fine if you scold me, but scolding my girlfriend, scolding my future wife. If I don't pull out your tongue and tie it, are you still human?" Therefore, just as Kawata Tamaki and the vice principal left the school gate, Raito's figure appeared behind them like a ghost. "This is a robbery, hand over all your things." Before Kawata Tamaki could react, a sharp military knife had been placed on his neck, and at the same time, a hoarse voice sounded. It was now midnight, and there were very few pedestrians in the surrounding area. It was the perfect time for a robbery. "Robbery! Robbery! Spare! Spare my life!" After realizing that he was robbed, the vice principal next to him suddenly trembled and shouted at the top of his voice. But Kawata Tamaki didn't panic at all. He took out his wallet and watch, handed them to the vice principal, and said proudly, "Take it, that's all." Money was just a worldly possession. Since he encountered a robbery, he would just give it to him. In any case, this stupid thief would be caught early in the morning, and everything would be taken back without being touched. After all, Kawata Tamaki was a noble member of the royal family and a politician's family. If he was robbed, the police would definitely send a large number of police officers to investigate. How could this stupid thief escape? Therefore, in Kawata Tamaki's view, the guy who dared to rob him was a complete idiot who didn't even know who he provoked. Seeing his calm and arrogant attitude, Raito couldn't help but laugh. "Bastard, you seem to be very good at giving money. Are you used to being robbed by your father? If you think so, then so be it. But you can't just take out your wallet and watch. The clothes you're wearing look quite valuable. Take them off immediately." "Huh? The clothes I'm wearing? No way, this guy even wants clothes. Is he so poor that he's crazy?" After hearing this sentence, Kawata Tamaki looked down at the expensive suit on his body, gritted his teeth, and said angrily, "Okay, if you like it, I'll give it to you." As the young master of the royal family, when did Kawata Tamaki suffer like this? But in this case, he could only take off his suit jacket and hand it over with trembling hands. But Raito didn't even look at his suit jacket, but continued to sneer. "What else? Continue to take it off. Continue to take it off. My shirt is worth a lot. If I say it's worth a lot, then it's worth a lot. Take off your shirt and trousers, hurry up. You. Damn it. Do you know who you're talking to?" Under such pressure, Kawata Tamaki finally couldn't take it anymore. He turned his head and shouted angrily at the masked robber. But Raito pretended not to know and asked, "I don't know, who are you?" "I'm the nephew of the current empress, Kawata Tamaki, the permanent representative of the United Nations and the Chief Justice of the International Court of Justice. Kawata Tamaki is my grandfather." "Really? Don't scare me, I'm so scared." "Are you scared now? Let me go now, I can." Slap. Without waiting for Kawata Tamaki to finish his words, Raito directly slapped him in the face. Although he didn't use any strength, the strength of his LV4 physique made Kawata Tamaki dumbfounded, and his face quickly swelled up like a pig's head. I was hit. I was hit by a stinky hooligan. Suddenly, Kawata Tamaki reached out to cover his swollen face and scolded in a hysterical tone, "Bastard! How dare you hit me? I'll kill you all." Slap. Before he could finish his words, Raito slapped him again. After the slap, he sneered, "Bastard, bastard, 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 you're a Brahmin, born noble, right? What are you pretending for, dog? How dare you? I'm the current emperor's emperor, your head." Slap. Before he finished speaking, another slap came. "My grandfather is the Chief Justice of the International Court of Justice, Chief, your head." Slap slap. This time it was 2 slaps, left and right. In short, for every sentence Kawata Tamaki said, Raito slapped him. The more he said, the more he slapped him. This exaggerated situation made the bald middle-aged man tremble uncontrollably. He couldn't imagine that there was someone in the world who dared to do such a thing to Master Kawata. He was the nephew of the current empress, and Kawata Tamaki was a political family with extraordinary influence in the country. How could he bear to hit him on the street? However, Long Do didn't care about this. In his opinion, it was already disgusting enough for this group of trash from the old era to survive until today. How dare they act so pretentious in front of him? Don't they know what kind of trash they are? So after dozens of slaps in a row, slowly beating Kawata Tamaki until he almost fainted, Raito snorted coldly and put his wallet, watch, and stolen exam papers in his pocket. Before leaving, Raito finally pulled Kawata Tamaki's hair and said contemptuously, "Remember, the name of the only emperor of Japan is Uncle Sam. You and this country are just Uncle Sam's dogs. Don't always think so highly of yourself, trash." After saying this, Raito casually spat on his face, left him and swaggered away. Under the gaze of the bald man who was scared to the point of peeing, he disappeared into the darkness. Chapter 174. Raito didn't care much about the incident of beating up a member of the royal family tonight. Anyway, he already beat him up, and he is a generous person. He has already forgiven Kobatanaki. As long as that guy doesn't appear in front of him again, everyone will just pretend that nothing happened. But the next morning, Rui Hui called Raito's mobile phone. "Mrs. Rui Hui, what's wrong? Do you want to find someone to drink tea with? But I have an exam today." During this period of time, Rui Hui would sometimes call Long Do to chat or drink tea with him. But after the call was connected, Rui Hui's tone was very serious, and it didn't sound like she was chatting. She asked faintly, "Last night, Kobatanaki was beaten up by an unknown robber at the gate of your school. This matter has something to do with you, right? Did I make any mistakes?" Raito was a little surprised by the content of Rui Hui's call. After all, he thought that he did things very cleanly and shouldn't leave any clues. You don't need to make any mistakes. After all, it's hard to think of a second person who can do this kind of thing except for you. When she heard Raito's response, the corner of Rui Hui's mouth twitched slightly. Obviously, she was speechless. After Kobatanaki was beaten unconscious yesterday, the bald middle-aged vice principal immediately called an ambulance to send him to the hospital. Naturally, he also immediately informed Kobatanaki's family. Rui Hui, as the leader of the Kamiyoshi clan, and the Kamiyoshi clan and the royal family were distant relatives, naturally, she quickly received the specific information about this matter. After hearing the vice principal's dictation, Rui Hui immediately reacted. Yesterday, the man in black didn't cause trouble for Kobatanaki for money. He just wanted to find trouble with him. After a little investigation, Rui Hui found out that Kobatanaki once pursued Yunyang, and because of this matter, he was quite resentful of Raito Kiri. In other words, this guy was Raito's enemy, and everything made sense. Only a bold guy like Raito would dare to slap a relative of the royal family like a dog on this small island. Especially the last sentence, "The name of the only emperor of Japan is Uncle Sam," was repeated by the vice principal, which directly caused the entire royal family to explode. They are now crazily putting pressure on the cabinet office, demanding that the Metropolitan Police Department catch the criminal within a day, so the sirens in Tokyo are especially loud today. Ha ha ha, you managed to break through his defenses? But can they find me? That's unlikely. You did it very cleanly, and it's hard to find the culprit. But it's better if you don't go out in the same outfit as before. After all, Owada won't let it go so easily. Obviously, Rui Hui was on Raito's side in this matter. Or rather, she didn't like the royal family and those politicians who didn't know what they were doing. They obviously didn't have any ability, yet they liked to point fingers. It was quite disgusting. Owada Ya, the current Empress Wuda, I heard that she doesn't seem to be in a good mental state. She was diagnosed with adjustment disorder. In fact, after Raito returned home yesterday, he also investigated some information about the royal family, especially Owada Ya's aunt, Owada Ya. The result was very unexpected, because in the eyes of the people, Owada Ya was not a domineering empress, but a pitiful person with a sad color. It was said that the empress didn't want to marry into the royal family at first. It was the current Emperor Wuda who fell in love with her at first sight at a concert when he was young. He pursued her and forced her to give up her career and enter the royal family. After marrying into the royal family, she also suffered from mental illness because of all kinds of difficult experiences. It sounded like a very pitiful woman. But if evidence was really found, then the situation on Raito's side would be quite troublesome, and even Rui Hui might not be able to help him solve the problem. In short, you should be careful. Even if someone suspects you, never admit it. Okay, I'm not stupid. Why would I admit this kind of thing? Who knows, even if you do something outrageous, I won't be surprised. After sighing, Rui Hui hung up the phone, and Raito went to the Dori First High School as usual to prepare for today's exam. Because he already got the test paper yesterday, and he found the intellectual in the Rulon group overnight to help him establish a good relationship, Raito was quite confident about this exam. However, just after he finished a day of exams and returned to the headquarters, Consultant Fujiki sent him a piece of bad news. Now that Kazuma was on a plane to a foreign country, most of the daily organizational affairs were handed over to Consultant Fujiki. But this time, when Consultant Fujiki came to Raito, his face was very ugly. Young master, there is something I must report to you. What is it? The Metropolitan Police Department sent a notice, asking us to assist in providing the physical characteristics and voice information of all young men in the organization. Not one less. What? After hearing this sudden notice, Raito couldn't help but frown. Providing the physical characteristics and voice information of all young men, at a glance, it was obvious that they were looking for someone, and they were looking for someone who met certain conditions. This morning, Rui Hui warned that the royal family put pressure on the Cabinet Office. The Metropolitan Police Department was a working organization under the Cabinet Office, and it was obvious that this matter was related to the Owada incident yesterday. Raito didn't expect that the Queen would use various means to dig out the criminal, but he didn't expect them to be so ruthless. From the situation learned by Consultant Fujiki, they didn't ask the Rulon group to provide the information of the person, but they asked all the Kyoto and various organizations in the Tokyo area to provide similar assistance. In other words, they were now crazy to the point that they planned to dig up the entire Tokyo to dig out the person who did this. If it was just beating up Owada, the royal family shouldn't be so furious. In the end, they should be broken by Raito's words. The name of the only emperor of Japan is Uncle Sam. Saying such words to a relative of the royal family was almost like slapping the entire royal family in the face, and it was the kind of slapping that resounded loudly from both sides. Even if they were mascots, they had to be mascots representing a country. The face wasn't something that could be slapped, except for Uncle Sam. Although there were no clues of the criminal so far, from the judgment of professionals, they should be sure that it was done by the underground society, including the Kyoto. Therefore, the Metropolitan Police Department began to use this extreme method to try to dig out the criminal from the tens of millions of people in Tokyo. But the Metropolitan Police Department knows that this kind of thing is against the rules, right? If we don't give them the information, what can they do? The message from the other side is, if we don't cooperate, they will start to wipe out all kinds of people, guaranteeing that our lives will be more difficult day by day." After hearing Consultant Fujiki's words, Raito couldn't help but sneer. What a good Owada Empress, what a good cabinet office, what a good metropolitan police department. If they really started to use all kinds of methods to deal with the Kyodo, there weren't many people who could withstand it. After all, underground organizations couldn't be enemies with a serious state government. State government. If you want to trouble me, then come. I'll play with you guys and see who is the unlucky one in the end. Chapter 175. Suddenly, the corner of Raito's mouth slightly raised, and he put on a return of the Dragon King posture, which seemed very arrogant. Then he said to Consultant Fujiki, "When will the person collecting the information come?" "In about an hour. They will come here one by one to collect samples from the young male members who meet the age." "Very good. I'll go back and prepare." After leaving such a sentence, Raito quickly walked to his room. In fact, the matter of Tokyo digging 3 feet into the ground to dig up criminals was somewhat troublesome for Ryudo. Although he was equipped with the rogue voice-changing mask at the time, which could block his appearance and change his voice. But the voice and appearance could be blocked, but the body shape couldn't be changed. In addition, if Rui could find out that Raito and Takatanaki had some friction, the Metropolitan Police Department naturally had no reason not to find out. In this case, if Raito's body shape was exactly the same as what the vice principal saw, then he would be easily exposed. Of course, the premise was that Raito couldn't change his body shape and body shape. Normal people couldn't make themselves fatter, thinner, taller, or shorter in a day or two. But Raito was different. He didn't belong to the category of normal people at all. He was a dignified pay-to-win player. So after returning to his room, Raito opened the system that he hadn't touched for a long time, and wanted to see if there were any similar items in the shop. During this time, Raito was basically earning money. Not to mention that he often went out in the middle of the night to rob punks. During this period, he also played 2 B-level matches in the Sai River fighting arena. After winning a B-level match, he could get a prize of 30 million. Raito played 2 matches, and he got 60 million just like that. If it wasn't for the fact that B-level and above matches needed time to arrange and couldn't be played every day, Raito wanted to buy a house there and earn money every day. After playing for a year and a half, all his attributes would have been maxed out. In addition to the money mentioned by the Sai River fighting arena, the first batch of dividends from the Rulong Security Company had also arrived. In the past month, the Rulong Security Company had accepted more than 10 security missions and earned more than 80 million yuan. More and more people were lining up to ask for money. Of course, the main reason for this situation was that several other relatively large security companies in Tokyo had already collapsed. Under the joint plotting of Raito, Sensible, and Gao Yuan, they had messed up several missions, and their reputation was tarnished. Anyway, the security company industry was a competition of lousy. The newly established Rulong Security Company didn't look that bad, so it became the first company that many bosses considered. From this, Raito received more than 20 million in cash. Although it wasn't much, considering that this was only the first month's performance, it was already quite good. Including the money from fighting the hooligans and some assets that he had left behind, Raito's current capital pool had reached the level of 120 million. 120 million, what kind of concept was that? It was a large sum of money enough for Raito to buy 120 jobs. It was a large sum of money enough for Raito to upgrade his stats twice. It was a large sum of money enough for Raito to buy things in the shop. However, Raito didn't plan to spend all of this money at once. He wanted to save as much as he could and not use it as much as possible. He didn't save so much money to collect interest, but to save a person. To save a person who had helped him a lot, Ruehue Kamishiro. In order to prevent Ruehue from dying due to illness like in the original timeline, Ryudo has changed his short-term mission to save this kamikaze family head. But saving Ruehue wasn't easy, because her terminal illness wasn't an injury, but an illness. After refreshing the shop, Raito also tried to spend 10 million to buy a hooligan first aid pill for Ruehue, but it didn't have any effect. After all, the second time he bought the pill, which was twice as expensive, it only said can cure most injuries and didn't say can cure most injuries. Injuries and illnesses were different. Even if a Sai Yang could recover quickly from an injury, they could still die of a heart attack. However, there was indeed something in the shop that could cure injuries, and it was called Hooligan 100 Immortal Pill. The description of this immortal pill was with one pill, all illnesses will disappear, skin will become supple, and you will become a new person. It felt like after eating it, one could become an immortal, cleansing one's marrow and forging one's bones on the spot. However, the price of such a useful item was also quite reasonable. The first pill cost 1 billion. In fact, from an objective point of view, 1 billion to achieve the effect of becoming a new person was really worth it. The price was ridiculously high. Unfortunately, Raito couldn't take out that much money. Ruehui could take out 1 billion, but Raito couldn't ask her in advance. After all, if he directly told her you give me 1 billion, I can cure your terminal illness, it would feel like a swindler swindling money. No one in their right mind would believe it. Therefore, Raito planned to first take out 1 billion to buy the medicine for Ruehui to eat, and after her terminal illness was cured, he would let her compensate him with 1 billion. At that time, Ruehui knew that Raito wasn't joking, and would certainly compensate him with such a large sum of money. Maybe there would be more returns, hey. However, even if it wasn't the time to spend extravagantly, Raito still had to take out some money to deal with this situation. Beep beep beep, beep beep beep. Just as Raito was lying on the bed in his room looking at the shop, thinking about what to buy, Sensible's phone suddenly rang. Hello, Sensible, what's wrong? Boss, the Metropolitan Police Department is investigating all the Kyoto and similar organizations in Tokyo. They are looking for a criminal with great fanfare. You should know about this. I know, in less than an hour, they will come to me to collect information. Do you have any suggestions? As far as I know, the one responsible for the Rulon Group is the Search Section 1 Chief Tokushima Rinka. She is a ruthless character, it's better not to provoke her. Since he knew that the chief of the Search Section 1 was collecting information on the Rulon Group, Sensible had already thought of the trouble that might arise on Raito's side. Search Section 1 First Division, this department had a pivotal position in the entire Metropolitan Police Department system. They were in charge of murder, robbery, assault, sexual crimes, and the worst criminal cases. Only the officers from the search department could wear a gold-framed red circular badge with the words S1 SMPD on the collar of their suits, which represented the difference between them and the other departments. It was no exaggeration to say that this was the most elite police force in Tokyo, second only to the special forces and other unconventional armed forces that dealt with various large-scale incidents. And the section chief who led this batch of police force, with the title of Ghost of the Investigation Department, Tokushima in Hana, was the elite of the elite. He had made many outstanding achievements, and in his 30s, he was promoted to the police inspector, which could be said to be an exaggeration of the super high position. After receiving Sensible's reminder, Raito first frowned, then nodded and said, Tokushima Rinka. It's her, I know. Boss, it's good that you know. Try to have a good attitude towards her. Don't go against her, otherwise it will be difficult to clean up. That woman is really difficult to deal with. Indeed, her brain is indeed a bit dirty. Then that's it, I still have something to do, I'll hang up first. After hanging up the phone, Raito's mind appeared a woman with short hair, a beautiful appearance, and a strong figure, but the way she did things was quite scary. Search Section 1 Chief Tokushima Rinka. In the game Red Album 2, No Survivors, she was a big character with a lot of scenes, and she was also the head of the Tenmu conglomerate. Guard Department. That's right, Tokushima Rinka was the chief of the Metropolitan Police Department on one hand, and the head of the Tenmu conglomerate. Guard Department on the other hand, she had two identities, and the former identity was to serve the latter identity. In other words, this guy was Eiheim's subordinate, a nail that Eiheim inserted into the Metropolitan Police Department. Similar nails could be found everywhere in the government of Tokyo. After all, Eiheim had already penetrated the official system in these years, and there were people everywhere. Although Tokushima Rinka's position wasn't the highest among them, she was the most useful. After all, she was the chief of the search section 1. As the saying goes, it's better to be in charge than to be in charge of a county. Rinka could really be in charge of a lot of places. It could be said that she provided a huge help to Eheim in turning the country upside down in the later stage. It's just that Raito didn't think that he would be able to meet Tokushima Rinka so early. But since she came to find him, he had to think of a way to deal with her. Tokushima Rinka. Wait, if I remember correctly, this woman seems to be a love-struck idiot. And she's also a masochist. Thinking about it, Raito suddenly thought of some descriptions of the woman in the game. Rinka was beautiful, dignified, determined, and impartial. She often had a straight face and was very difficult to get close to. She was an excellent police officer who could shoulder the title of chief. But if she was really as serious as she looked on the surface, she couldn't be a spy sent by Eheim, that lunatic. So under the surface of the iceberg, the real Rinka was a love-struck idiot who had no resistance to handsome men, and she had a strong masochistic hobby. If the other party was a handsome man, her attitude would be much better. Otherwise, it was as bad as it could be. It was so bad that you would wonder whether she was a police officer or a hooligan. There's a way. Although it was a bit of a loss, the money that should be spent still needs to be spent, and the advantages that should be taken advantage of still need to be taken advantage of. Sigh. After sighing Raito Kiri, I'm actually reduced to selling my body. Raito happily pressed the LV3 charm upgrade button. At the same time, he also asked the servant to help find the most handsome set of clothes, and called the best hairstylist nearby, ready to fight an earth-shattering battle of beauty in a while. Chapter 176. When it was close to 7 or 8 o'clock, a few different cars drove onto the street where the Rulon Group headquarters was located. Anyone who knew a little bit about the industry would know that this kind of car was the Metropolitan Police Department or the Search Department. As long as this kind of car appeared, it would inevitably be accompanied by some major case, and it would cause a storm in the city. Screech. Accompanied by a burst of braking sound, the car stopped outside the Rulon Group headquarters. The police officer who accompanied the first car quickly walked to the back and opened the back seat. A long leg wearing flesh-colored stockings and high heels stepped out. Because of her position as the section chief, Teshima Hana didn't need to wear the police uniform all the time, but wore a dark grey tight professional suit. Under the short and narrow skirt, two slender and well-proportioned legs wrapped in flesh-colored stockings were exposed. The pointed black high heels and neat short hair made the female section chief look quite capable, and her aura was also very strong. However, even if she wore such a professional and serious outfit, it still couldn't hide Teshima Hana's outstanding appearance. She was indeed very beautiful. There was not the slightest flaw in her delicate and pretty facial features. Her pretty face without makeup looked quite clean. Her slender eyes gave people a cold feeling. She was obviously an ice beauty. Capable, elegant, serious, trustworthy, different from those women who used fancy clothes and makeup to dress themselves up like butterflies, Hana could be said to be the perfect representative of the word professional woman. Or, from the outside, she was such a person. As for the inside, it was better not to delve into it. After getting out of the car, Hana lit a cigarette that she was used to smoking, took a deep breath, and felt the stimulation of the smoke filling her lungs. Then, she used her usual cold tone to order her subordinates, "Go in and search carefully, don't let anyone go." Yes. With the section chief's order, more than 10 police officers followed behind her and rushed toward the door of the Rulon Group headquarters. When they arrived at the door, Hana didn't knock on the door, nor did she press the doorbell next to it. She just took a step forward and slammed her right hand in front of the door. The next moment, the thick solid wooden door was directly broken with a crisp crack sound. There was a sturdy bolt behind the wooden door. Logically speaking, even a strong man would not be able to break it. But with Toshima Rinka's palm, the thick door bolt actually broke, as if performing a magic trick. Obviously, Tokushima Hana was definitely not the civilian police officer she appeared to be. Her combat strength was so high that no one in the Metropolitan Police Department could compare to her. Again. The bad habit of the section chief was that he never liked to knock on the door. When their section chief walked inside, the servants who were about to open the door stared at them with their mouths agape. The police officers who were being stared at showed awkward expressions. But no matter what, a search was a search. When the officers from the search department arrived, Mr. Fujiki greeted them politely. Section Chief Tokushima, all the male members of the Rulon group who meet the age requirements have gathered here. You can start to register one by one. Where is your so-called young master, Raito Kiri? There are too many people here. He is waiting in the living room. I will bring the officers there in a moment. No need, I will personally go and greet him. After glancing at Mr. Fujiki, Inhana walked toward the living room with a cigarette in her mouth. It was as if she didn't care about this group of extreme Dao. This woman, HMPH. But even so, Mr. Fujiki didn't dare to say anything. After all, there were many rumors about Tokushima in Hana, and they were all sensational stories. Basically, the section chief of the search department would do anything to solve a case, and she would never be restrained by something as boring as morality. Her style was very free. She once locked a suspect in a freezer for 48 hours. When he was about to die from the cold, she pulled him out to warm him up. Then she threw him back into the freezer. In the end, the suspect couldn't take it anymore and was forced to confess. She once led a team directly to a certain extreme Dao base and fired heavy firepower without asking until everyone inside was turned into a hornet's nest. She once personally drove a police car to hit a robber who was trying to escape. The robber was directly sent flying dozens of meters away. After landing, she accidentally ran over the robber and turned him into a salted fish. In the eyes of the extreme Dao, this woman was a police officer who was more ruthless than the extreme Dao. She was the type who killed without blinking an eye. And because she was very good at writing reports, Inhana could always use various methods to wash away all the excessive crimes she committed. This led her to rise step by step, and she stepped on countless corpses to reach a high position. Over time, the people in the Yoto circle had formed a consensus, which was to never provoke Tokushima in Hana, because no matter how ruthless you were, you would never be as ruthless as her. However, just as advisor Fujiki brought Lin Hua to the reception room, the head of the search department muttered to himself while puffing on a cloud of smoke. Raito Kiri, the man who escaped from Iheim Sama time and time again, and even killed the deputy director of the secret department, Misty Demon. Are you a lucky person? Or do you have the ability to reach this level? I'm really curious. That's right. The main reason why Tokushima in Hana came here in person was because she was curious about Raito. As a spy of the Tenmu group, she naturally knew a lot of inside information of the group. After all, the name Raito Kiri had long become a big topic of conversation in the group. But curiosity was curiosity. If Raito Kiri was a man with real ability, it would be fine. If he was just a lucky man without any advantages, Tokushima in Hana would never let him go. At that time, I will definitely catch you and throw you into the cold room. Hiss. Before Inhana finished this sentence in her heart, she and Fujiki had already arrived in the reception room and saw the handsome man sitting on the sofa like a prince with a glass of red wine in his hand. The moment she saw this young master, Tokushima in Hana only felt her heart beat faster, as if it was going to fly out from somewhere with some strange liquid. Her rosy lips opened slightly, and the cigarette in her mouth fell to the ground. Her breathing was rapid, her eyes quickly widened, and her body became stiff. This sudden change was even noticed by consultant Fujiki on the side. For Fujiki, who had been in the underworld for so long and had dealt with Inhana more than once, of course, he knew that this female section chief had a preference for handsome men. This was also human nature. After all, Inhana was a normal woman. It was not strange for her to like handsome men. And Fujiki had to admit that the young man sitting on the sofa was really attractive to women. The young man sitting on the sofa was naturally Raito Kiri, but he didn't look like the usual slovenly little hooligan. The luxurious golden hair was obviously done by the hairstylist. After reperming and dyeing, it showed a texture that was not cheap at all. A few of the golden strands were softly placed on the forehead, and the breath of youth rushed to the face. Such an elegant, upper-class hairstyle and hair color, and the neat gray suit on his body, the spotless black trousers and leather shoes, gave a strong sense of chic. Raito's appearance was quite handsome. His skin was white, his nose was straight, and his posture was tall and straight. It was just that he had never tidied himself up properly, and many of his highlights were covered by his fierce aura, so it was not very obvious that he was handsome. Now that his charm had been raised to the level of LV4 charm, International Warrior, the temperament that exuded from his gestures was impressive. Coupled with his excellent taste in clothes and proper tidying up, it was natural that he had been reborn. Full of seductive charm, luxurious and with a hint of melancholy at the same time, he was like a noble young master who had been weathered since childhood, but always stuck to himself. This was the feeling that Raito Kiri gave people now. Unknowingly, let alone in Hana, even Fujiki, who had watched Raito grow up, was stunned. What's going on? How did young Master Raito become so handsome? He was simply not the same person as before. If the average score of Raito's appearance and temperament was only 70 to 80 points before, and when he opened his mouth, the current him was already close to the full score of 90 points and above. His originally handsome appearance, coupled with the powerful charm of an international superstar, as well as the meticulous care of his clothing, hairstyle, and makeup, presented this kind of breathtaking feeling. "Oh, you're here, Ms. Tejima." When Tejima in Hana and advisor Fujiki walked over with sluggish steps, Raito also slowly stood up. The corner of his mouth raised into an elegant arc, and he spoke to Inhana in a graceful tone. For a moment, Inhana's eyes were filled with a pair of deep and mysterious eyes like moist black jade, exuding a charming charm. Her ears were filled with a voice that did not match her age, but with a rich mature charm. Hey, this guy fell for it. When he felt that this ghost searcher was in a state of being enchanted by his extraordinary charm, Raito struck while the iron was hot, picked up a wine glass, and affectionately poured red wine into it and handed it over. "This is 2005 Romani Conti, it's suitable for a beauty like you, how about you taste it with me?" According to Raito's knowledge, in addition to liking beautiful boys and smoking, Tejima in Hana also liked to drink. So he prepared the best wine, plus the best of himself, ready to set a trap for this guy. "Me? Huh?" Looking at the wine glass Raito handed over, Inhana took a step back and tried to refuse. "Wait, I'm working now, I shouldn't." "Don't say that, just treat it as red grape juice." "Who said you can't drink red grape juice at work? As a person, you should know how to enjoy life, after all, life is short, right?" After forcefully stuffing the wine glass into Inhana's hand, Raito winked at her with his left eye and gave her a charming look. Now, this autumn spinach directly shattered Inhana's last line of defense. She reached out and looked at the glass in her hand, smelled the wine fragrance floating inside, and looked at the handsome boy in front of her. From this moment on, Tejima in Hana fell into the abyss. Chapter 177. Desire was like water. Rationality was like a dam. Rationality usually blocked desire, just like a dam blocking water, preventing the water from flowing downstream. But if the water in the dam was full, or even if there was an explosive growth, there would be problems. Especially when the dam was broken, the scene caused was even more terrifying. Today's Tokushima in Hana was obviously in a state where the dam was broken and the water was everywhere. After all, alcoholics were like this. As long as she took the first sip, it was impossible for her not to take a second sip. It was like I can only drink a little. After a sip of wine, it would become I can only drink a little bit. Therefore, after the first sip of wine went into her stomach, Inhana drank faster and faster, and her face became redder and redder. At first, the female section chief seemed to be a little restrained in front of Raito. After all, this kid was really too handsome, especially that strange charm that made her heart beat faster. But after 3 or 5 glasses of wine, after the wine gave her courage, she began to lean over with a smile. "Raito-kun. Can I call you that?" She looked at Raito with eyes that were about to overflow with desire. She leaned forward slightly, reached for the armrest of the sofa, and put her head close to the man. Because consultant Fujiki had been driven away, and the reception room was closed. Now there were only the two of them here, and no one had to worry about anything. Of course, then I'll call you in, Hannah. In the face of such a drunk alcoholic, Raito put on a professional male PR smile and replied in a charming tone. Ah, you are really understanding. After a few giggles, Hannah turned over with the armrest and sat on Raito's knee. Oh. This is really not bad. Although Raito was the one being harassed now, he had to say that he felt pretty good now. No matter what, Tokushima Hannah was also a great beauty, and she was the kind of big sister that Raito had never met before. She was in her early 30s. From her appearance to the way she dressed, she seemed to belong to the abstinent type. It was as if she had no interest in men at all. She was very cold and unapproachable. But in fact, there was a monster hidden in Lin Hua's heart. It was a monster called the carnivore. It would fly out in the middle of the night and look for handsome men to absorb their vitality. After drinking a few mouthfuls of wine, the woman's inner desires were completely released. Her behavior and expression became bolder, which was in sharp contrast to her appearance. The more serious the ascetic character was on the surface, the more irresistible it was when he revealed his true colors. In addition, her appearance and figure were excellent, so when this woman sat on his lap and felt her supple buttocks pressing against him, Raito couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Raito-kun, I really want to eat you. Can I? At this moment, Lin Hua reached out and wrapped her arms around Raito's neck. She put her head close to his neck. As she spoke, she stuck out her pink tongue and licked there. A slippery and sticky feeling that he had never experienced before spread out. The air was filled with a pink atmosphere, and Raito almost had the illusion that he was being eaten. Not good. This was too bad. Originally, Raito only planned to seduce this silly woman so that she would be magnanimous in this search. However, he didn't expect Lin Hua's seduction to be so much stronger than he imagined. If this continued, he might end up in trouble. No. How can I let down 3 wives and 1 mother-in-law? I can't give my first time to this woman. If it's not my first time, I can still consider it. So just as Lin Hua straddled him and was about to give Raito a passionate French kiss, the latter reached out and pushed her away slightly. Oh, don't be shy, you're so cute, he. It's not about being shy. There are still a lot of people outside, and they're all brought here by you. Don't mind it, let's have some fun here, they won't come over to fight. Dong. Just as Lin Hua was about to say they won't come over to disturb, let me do it, a knock on the door came from outside the reception room. Just in time. When he heard the knock on the door, Raito suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. Lin Hua, on the other hand, frowned, and a fierce look suddenly appeared on her face. After the knock on the door, an unfamiliar voice from outside shouted inside, Chief Teshima, most of the information of the people outside has been collected, only Raito Kiri is left, is he inside? Bastard, I haven't even had a good time yet, so I have to go back and do it myself, damn it. After gritting her teeth, Lin Hua looked at the little fresh meat in front of her that was almost swallowed into her stomach, and could only get up from the sofa regretfully. Next time, Raito-kun, sister is looking forward to seeing you again. Before leaving, Lin Hua kissed Raito's face, and after tidying up her appearance, she pushed the door and walked out. After going out, Lin Hua said to the police officer outside angrily, "Let's go, inform everyone to get off work immediately, I have an urgent matter to go home." Ah! When he heard her words, the police officer who came to inquire asked doubtfully, "But there is no information about Raito Kiri, height of 1.9 meters, weight of 230 pounds, find someone to record the voice, that's all." This is also possible. Originally, the police officer wanted to ask more clearly, but Lin Hua looked at him with angry eyes, and he was scared to turn around and run away. Tonight, Lin Hua was already very annoyed that she didn't have a good time. She couldn't go up and down, so how could she have any thoughts to collect information about Raito? She could just deal with it casually. However, next time, sister will definitely collect information for you. He, Raito Kiri, hiss. After sticking out her tongue and licking her rosy lips, Lin Hua led the team away at lightning speed, and she abandoned the team halfway and let them go back to report on their own. She quietly sneaked back home. As for why Lin Hua was in such a hurry to sneak back home, she was probably sleeping. I don't know, and I don't dare to say. Young Master Raito, they all left, are you okay here? After sending away the guys from the search department, Consultant Fujiki returned to the reception room again and asked Raito, who was wiping his face with a tissue. It's okay, she shouldn't have carefully measured my physical data, so she just fooled around. When Raito heard the data that Lin Hua casually reported when she left, he almost laughed on the spot. He was 1.9 meters tall, 230 pounds, and his voice was recorded by a random person. It would be strange if they would find out that he was a criminal. Moreover, this was personally investigated by the section chief, so no one would suspect him of fraud. In other words, judging from Tokushima Lin Hua's usual style, even if someone suspected him of fraud, they wouldn't dare to say it. Thus, with Lin Hua leading the group away, Long Do was able to overcome the crisis caused by him accidentally beating up a member of the imperial family. Thanks to his handsome face, Long Do was able to successfully overcome the crisis. At this moment, Consultant Fujiki looked at Raito with a strange look, as if he wanted to say something, but he was too embarrassed to say it. After Raito noticed it, he asked casually, "Uncle Fujiki, what's wrong? If you have something to say, just say it. You didn't do anything to that woman today, right?" After a moment of hesitation, Fujiki asked in a somewhat awkward tone. After all, he was an uncle in his 40s or 50s. It was a bit strange to ask a teenager if he was done to by a woman in her 30s. It felt like he was a pimp. No, just a little. Phew, that's good. Consultant Fujiki breathed a sigh of relief and smiled bitterly. You have the direct bloodline of the Rulong group. If it was stolen by that woman, it would be troublesome. So that's what you're thinking about. Don't worry, she won't want to steal any bloodline. The process of stealing the bloodline is what she wants. Well, but I didn't think that young master could become so handsome after tidying up. If you go to the nightclub now, most of the girls will be fascinated by you. Suddenly, Consultant Fujiki took 2 steps back and looked at Raito with appreciation from top to bottom. Consultant Fujiki had been in the underworld for so long, and he had seen a lot of handsome men and beautiful women in nightclubs. Kamidachi at night was a real demon's den. All kinds of handsome men and beautiful women walked on the street, especially those male PR men who specialized in cheating women's money were even more handsome. But even the most professional male PR men in Japan might not be as handsome as Raito today. In Fujiki's view, his young master's appearance and temperament were magical. It was not as simple as a handsome appearance, but it was an addictive feeling. Although the male PR men in the nightclub looked very handsome, but after looking at them for a while, he could feel that they were just handsome embroidered bags. Other than being handsome, there were some weeds inside, and they were not very useful. But Raito was different. The more he looked at him, the more he could feel this man's alluring mellow charm like the Romani Conti in 2005. This was also a matter of course. After all, Raito had experienced so many things. His temperament was already very different from ordinary people. How could a group of ordinary handsome men who sold their appearance to make money compare to him? Even if Raito were to shoot a movie now, he might immediately become an international level star and become famous overnight. This was the combined power of LV4 charm plus a good appearance and the aura of a young master. It could be said that he was a walking mail bomb. Is that so? I'm so bad *SS now. After being praised by Consultant Fujiki, Raito also picked up the phone and looked at his face. Beep beep beep, beep beep beep. At the same time, Colored Glaze's phone call happened to come. She should want to ask about the investigation. By the way, since I'm so handsome now, then I'll just show it to my first wife and see if Colored Glaze likes it. After considering this, Raito did not answer the call, but turned his head and called a video invitation. When the video invitation was accepted, Raito reached out and touched his hair, and released a charming smile to Colored Glaze. Chapter 178. After the video call connected, Kanzaki Colored Glaze's delicate and beautiful face appeared on the screen. At the same time, she couldn't help but ask, why video call? Colored Glaze originally wanted to ask why a video call was needed. Wouldn't a voice call be better? But halfway through her sentence, she saw the dragonhead's face that was several times more handsome than usual. Although Raito was usually quite handsome, after specially dressing up and increasing his charm, he had undergone a qualitative leap. He went from a handsome delinquent to a top-notch handsome guy. Thus, when Colored Glaze saw his face, she was instantly stunned. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Raito was obviously very satisfied with his first wife's shock. "Hehe, are you dizzy from my handsomeness? Hurry up and praise me." So he smiled and asked, "How is it? Today, so stupid." What? But what Raito didn't expect was that Colored Glaze didn't hesitate to say so stupid. She looked at the handsome face that looked like a TV star's on the screen and said in disdain, "You did your hair, put on makeup, and even changed into such formal clothes. Who are you? Are you planning to be a male host? Disgusting. You don't have to be so rude." Raito originally thought that Colored Glaze would have a "wow, you're so handsome, I love you so much" type of reaction, but it turned out to be such a reply. She even used the word disgusting. However, when Colored Glaze heard this, she didn't hold back and replied, "Face? You know what face is. Don't you know what kind of person you are? Do you think it's very dignified for a young master to dress up so extravagantly? The Rulone Group has changed its job to a male host club. You're too. Stop talking nonsense. If you dress up like this again in the future, don't appear in front of me again. Goodbye." Colored Glaze hung up the phone after saying something that sounded very unpleasant. Her tone and attitude were very bad. Just as Raito was at a loss for what to do, the dancing costume in Colored Glaze's room revealed a puzzled expression. "Young miss, why are you so angry? He seems to have deliberately dressed up to please you. What's wrong with that?" Dancing Costume had also seen Raito's appearance on the phone. At least in Dancing Costume's opinion, he was indeed very handsome and could attract girls. Generally speaking, wasn't it normal for a young man to look for a girl after carefully dressing up to let her see his most handsome side? Moreover, Raito was indeed very handsome after dressing up. Dancing Costume could not help but feel her heart beat faster when she looked at him. Since Colored Glaze liked Raito to begin with, she should be even more excited. Therefore, Dancing Costume could not understand why Colored Glaze was so angry. However, Colored Glaze heard her words and said angrily, "What's wrong with that? You should ask yourself, what's so good about that exaggerated and gaudy dressing up? It's completely tasteless. It's completely tasteless. In fact, Raito usually has no taste." Speaking of this, Dancing Costume could not help but think of Raito's usual appearance. Although Raito usually could not be said to be ugly, there was a lingering ruffian aura that could not be removed. It was the kind of feeling that was unique to gangsters. Coupled with that guy's glib tongue and frivolous expression, he gave people the feeling that although he was handsome, he was also a ruffian. However, Raito just now was different. After tidying up and changing into a suit, and after adjusting his appearance, the ruffian aura on him had mostly dissipated. It was as if he had taken on a new look. If Dancing Costume had to choose between the Raito just now and the usual Raito, she would definitely choose the serious young master in a suit, and not the usual talkative guy. Dancing Costume, if you only look at the surface, then you're still at the first level. However, Colored Glaze pursed her lips, as if expressing regret at Dancing Costume's level. "No, miss, do you really think that Raito just now was not handsome? Handsome my ass. It's so different from usual. I don't feel anything about it. Usual. Do you think that he's more handsome normally? Of course, the Raito that I like is not such a superficial person. He has an unruly gaze, a fierce expression, and a sinister smile. He exudes an aura of not a good person from head to toe." As Colored Glaze spoke, she lifted her beautiful chin slightly, as if she was recalling her memories of Raito Kiri. In the gloomy seaside cottage, in front of the god statue in the courtyard, in the garden of the school. The man who appeared in front of Liu Li was always like this, and not the kind of rich young master with a greasy hair and powdered face. I don't think that Miss's description of him is a compliment at all. Seeing that Miss seemed to be immersed in her beautiful memories, Dancing Costume could not help but break out in a cold sweat. Indeed, he's not a good person, but he understands what I want and what I need. This is something that no other good person can do. Colored Glaze completely understood Dancing Costume's meaning, but in reality, Dancing Costume was indeed on the first level, Raito was on the 5th level, and Colored Glaze was in the atmosphere. In Colored Glaze's past life, there were many people like Raito who wore a suit and combed his hair. They looked quite handsome, and they behaved very elegantly. In her past life, Colored Glaze had seen a lot of them. Every time she went to a banquet or other activities, similar guys would swarm over and show their gentlemanly demeanor to the eldest daughter of the Kanzaki family. Indeed, they were very handsome, cultured, had good family backgrounds, and were very knowledgeable. From a societal perspective, they were impeccable. However, such people dared to be rude to the Kamiyoshi, dared to say I'm marrying your miss to a cat house, dared to disfigure the statue that the Kamiyoshi had worshipped for generations. Most of the righteous people were dog butchers, and most of the heartless people were scholars. Those young people who were born in a prestigious family, had 3 to 5 degrees from famous schools, worked out every day to maintain their physical and mental health, looked handsome, dressed fashionably, had an annual salary of tens of millions, and had a limitless future. Who would be willing to offend the Kamiyoshi clan for Colored Glaze? Who would be willing to gamble their life and future? No, it was impossible. Only that fierce-looking young man with a head of poorly dyed blonde hair and an unruly aura could do this. I had already given up on my life a long time ago. I planned to be a vegetarian king like mother for 20 years, and when I was old, I would come out and find a random man to have a child with. It was that little punk who gave me hope, so in my heart, he was the most handsome. After sighing, Colored Glaze said in a firm tone, "Miss." After understanding Colored Glaze's meaning, Dancing Costume couldn't help but feel moved, and her impression of that stinky punk seemed to have improved. But she immediately reacted, and showed a strange motherly smile to Colored Glaze. "Dancing Costume? Why are you looking at me like that?" Being stared at by Dancing Costume with such an expression, it was Colored Glaze's turn to feel strange. "Because I suddenly realized that this seems to be the first time you've said that you like that little hooligan. It's really worth celebrating." Before this, whenever Dancing Costume asked Colored Glaze if she liked Raito, Colored Glaze would say who likes him, I'm just using that guy to do things. But just now, Colored Glaze didn't give a perfunctory answer, and directly expressed her feelings, which made Dancing Costume very surprised. "Huh? Is that so? It seems to be true." After being reminded by Dancing Costume, Colored Glaze realized that she really did say something she shouldn't have. For example, the Raito I like isn't such a superficial person, in my heart, he's the most handsome, and so on. Normally, Colored Glaze would never say such things even if she was beaten to death. Suddenly, Colored Glaze's face turned as red as a ripe apple, and even her round earlobes were dyed red, looking very cute. Dancing Costume, I order you to forget everything you heard before." What should I do? I'm a person who can forget, but I accidentally typed those words into a text message. Text message? Wait, who do you want to text? The sender seems to be Raito Kiri. "Miss, don't come over, okay? Or I might accidentally press the send button." Dancing Costume, you dare threaten me? I don't dare. Compared to the miss who dares to directly express her love, my courage is far inferior. Ha 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 ha. Although it was already late at night, Miss Kanagawa's room was still filled with a joyous atmosphere, mixed with a certain someone's shameful screams and so on. Although he didn't know what happened, Dancing Costume definitely didn't send the text message in the end. Otherwise, Raito wouldn't have come to school so listlessly the next morning like a rooster that had lost a fight. Disgusting. Colored Glaze actually thinks I'm disgusting. It's over, this time, her favorability towards me will definitely plummet. Unlike last night, Raito now looked quite dispirited. His hair had returned to its previous polar-dyed style, and his makeup was nowhere to be seen. He was once again wearing that loose-fitting school uniform. To put it simply, The elegant young master from last night had completely disappeared, and the vicious little ruffian from before had returned to his daily routine. Originally, Raito had intended to continue last night's style. After all, everyone wanted to be praised by others, and being praised by a group of people for being handsome was definitely better than being called a ruffian by a group of people. But since Colored Glaze didn't like it, he could only return to his original style and not do anything else. Just as Raito was walking towards the school gate in a dispirited manner, Colored Glaze and dancing costumes figures appeared not too far away. "Hey! Good morning." Because he was scolded last night, Raito was somewhat timid as he greeted the Miss O. "You finally decided not to play a role that doesn't suit you." Colored Glaze revealed a relaxed smile when she saw Raito's familiar appearance, and laughed at his misfortune. "Don't scold me. I know that look is stupid, okay? That's right, you are you, there's no need to do anything else, isn't it better to stay the same?" Colored Glaze took 2 steps forward, reached out and straightened the crooked tie on Raito's neck, and patted it with satisfaction. "That's it, see you at noon, bye-bye." After finishing this unusually intimate action, Colored Glaze smiled and waved at the surprised Raito, turned around and walked towards the school with dancing costume. What happened? Miss Colored Glaze seems to be in a good mood today. Isn't she mad at me? And her favorability doesn't seem to have dropped. I don't understand. Looking at the girl's back as she left, Long Do scratched his head in confusion. He had no idea what was going on. He was like a dumb goose that was favored by a goddess but didn't know it. Chapter 179. For a young girl, helping a boy tidy up his tie was undoubtedly a very intimate action. After all, in the eyes of most people, this action was done by the wife for the husband. If it was just an ordinary student, it would not be done at all. What's more, if the girl had a sweet smile on her face when she was helping the boy tidy up his tie, then it was even more obvious that the girl had fallen into a whirlpool of love at a glance. For Dory No. 1 High School, which emphasized on learning, although male and female relationships were strictly prohibited, there were still some couples who secretly played tricks on each other. No matter what, 16-year-old young people were at the age where they were strongly curious about the opposite sex. It was normal for them to have feelings for each other. This was human nature. However, no matter how normal it was, the fact that Miss Colored Glaze was tidying up a boy's tie at the school gate with a sweet smile on her face and eyes full of love was like a bolt from the blue. The sound of a pair of underwear shattering countless people's glasses and also shook the No. 1 High School's BBS. No one knew if it was a good thing or a bad thing, but this morning, Colored Glaze's action of tidying up Raito's tie at the school gate happened to be recorded by an expert from the photography department. Under the camera of this student with the online name successor of teacher Guan Shi, Raito and Colored Glaze were standing in front of the school gate. The former stood still while the latter leaned forward slightly and reached out to help the former straighten his collar. The resolution of this photo was high enough to be magnified to the point where every detail of the two's faces could be seen clearly. Raito's face had a look of disbelief, while Colored Glaze had a smile of a girl in love. Once this photo was published, it immediately became the most familiar photo in the entire Dory No. 1 High School in just a short morning. It also set off a frenzy of discussion on the school forum. Thousands of posts related to this matter appeared in just a short morning, and the post that was pushed to the top was a new voting post. The total number of votes was quite astonishing. Perhaps it was a coincidence. The last post that caused such a reaction was "What do you think is the relationship between Yunyang and that person?" This time, the title of the voting post was "What kind of punishment do you think Raito Kiri should receive?" After an entire morning, the voting results for this post were as follows. There were 276,829,210 votes for hang. The number of votes for death by dismemberment was 3,686,100,021. The number of votes for just kill him first was uncountable. It had exceeded the upper limit. Compared to the last time when Raito and Yunyang walked side by side through the school gate, the tie incident at the gate was obviously more shocking. Almost all the students of Dory No. 1 High School had stopped attending classes. They were crazily using their phones to read, post, and flame Raito in the classroom. In fact, when the teacher stood on the podium and looked around, all he could see was the clattering of phones. In the end, the teacher stopped attending classes. He turned on the projector and played an educational video. He also picked up his phone and joined the battle against the great villain Raito Kiri. That's right, a great villain. He really was a great villain. Compared to the last time when Yunyang walked into the school with that scumbag, this incident was obviously much more serious. After all, everyone knew that Yunyang was kind and amiable. It wasn't too hard to imagine that she would suddenly become merciful and willingly walk into the school with Raito. Although the probability was low, it didn't mean that it was impossible. But who was Kanzaki Colored Glaze? This second-year school beauty wasn't an amiable goddess like Yunyang. Instead, she was a well-known cold-faced lady. She was like a snow lotus on a tall mountain. She could be admired from afar, but couldn't be touched. Because Colored Glaze's aura was too strong, the difference between her and a normal high school student was too great. It was to the point that no boy dared to confess to her. At most, they only dared to take her picture and worship her like a god. But how did this iceberg snow lotus end up with Tong Sheng Longdo, that super invincible scoundrel? And she was even helping him fix his tie at the school gate. And she was smiling like a girl in love. Impossible. Definitely impossible. How could Kanzaki Rui possibly like that damn hooligan? She must have been drugged, or poisoned, or under some sort of spell. Raito Kiri must have used some despicable method to change the lady's mind. Or he must have cooked rice for her, cooked rice again, 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 cooked rice for the lady until she became stupid. The fall of the lady and yellow hair. Many people were already guessing on the forum how Colored Glaze was trained by Raito, how she lost herself, and how she became a doll in the end. It was obvious what kind of things were in the minds of the students in this school. They must have watched a lot of movies that required 2 or 3 people to act out. As more and more people joined in on this topic, the smell of gunpowder on First High's BBS became more and more intense. Finally, a post titled First High Students Call, Work Together, Kill Raito Kiri, was pushed to the front page, and it received thousands of responses within 10 minutes. The Karate Club is here to participate in the crusade. The Kendo Club is here to participate in the crusade. The Judo Club is here to participate in the crusade. The Boxing Club is here to participate in the crusade. The Wrestling Club is here to participate in the crusade. The Rugby Club is here to participate in the crusade. The Shujinshi Club is here to participate in the crusade. Under this post calling for a concerted crusade against Raito, almost all the sports clubs in the school participated in it. Although there were some strange clubs that participated, most of them were martial arts clubs. Although Dori No. 1 High School was a school for students, the strength of the clubs in it was also quite strong. For example, the Karate Club and the Judo Club often won the national high school competition. As soon as the post came out, almost all the departments were ready to participate in this crusade. They vowed that they would never allow Long Do to be so arrogant as to harm the school beauties. They vowed to fight this extreme hooligan to the end. However, after seeing the post on First High's BBS, Raito, who was eating in the garden during lunch break, couldn't help but laugh. Fart. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. These guys are too funny. Although there were hundreds of department members who signed up, Raito's laughter was still very rampant, as if he didn't put the hundreds of martial arts students in his eyes. Of course, this was indeed the case. The so-called martial arts students in high school, to put it bluntly, was a group of karate, judo, and boxing enthusiasts. They were far from the level of professionals. The current Raito was someone who fought his way out of being hunted by the entire underground world. For these martial arts students in high school, even if there were hundreds of them, they would only end up with corpses everywhere. Ants were ants, lions were lions. If there were tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of ants, It might be possible to kill a lion, but a few hundred ants. It wouldn't even be enough to fill the gap between a lion's teeth. Colored Glaze, who was sitting opposite him eating, naturally understood this principle, so she wasn't worried about Raito at all. Instead, she was worried about the group of idiots who were prepared to cause trouble, worried that too many of them would die. Those idiots. I was just in the mood to help Raito tidy up his tie. Was there a need to make such a big fuss? However, he had always been stirring up public anger. But even so, Colored Glaze still said to Raito next to her, "They're just a group of kids, it's fine if they make a fuss. You're not really going to argue with them, are you?" "I don't plan to argue, but the problem is that they don't want to let me go. Then I'll go talk to them. It won't be good for anyone if a fight really breaks out. Please don't, this is my business, how can I let you deal with it? You're not my wife for the time being. You don't have to say the last sentence. What do you plan to do now? Fighting in school is definitely not allowed, the impact will be very bad. Of course I won't fight with them, in fact, I plan to hold a Dory No. 1 martial arts tournament, in the form of a competition, wouldn't that be much friendlier?" Dory No. 1 martial arts tournament. When they heard the name that sounded like it came out of a comic book, Colored Glaze and Dancing Costume couldn't help but look at each other. However, after listening to Raito's explanation, they were even more stunned. The Dory No. 1 martial arts tournament will be held in the school's gymnasium this afternoon. A series of fascinating martial arts tournaments will be held in a friendly, harmonious, and relaxed atmosphere. Tournament Party A, Raito Kiri. Tournament Party B, all the registered participants. The rules of the tournament: Party B is free to challenge Party A, there is no limit to the number of participants. Participation method: participants need to pay a registration fee of 10,000 yuan, and spectators need to pay a viewing fee of 1,000 yuan. When Raito finished writing the Dory No. 1 martial arts tournament competition poster, he added a line below, "Come and fight with Raito Kiri happily, I'll be waiting for you." He also drew a cute cartoon figure on it. Because there were too many things to complain about in this tournament, even the king of complaints like Colored Glaze didn't know where to start. "Bro, they're here to seek revenge on you, and you want to collect money? That's too much, isn't it? Do you only care about money?" But no matter what, compared to the crusade organized by the clubs, Raito's tournament seemed more harmonious. At least in this kind of competition, they didn't have to worry about those idiots being beaten to a bloody pulp by Raito. It was much safer than a big battle royal. Chapter 180. Regarding the chaos that started this morning, the school was also having a headache. After all, judging from the situation of the students, they were all agitated by Tongsheng Ryudu. It was possible that he would be beaten up by countless righteous people as soon as school was over. In order to prevent the worst from happening, the school even prepared to call the police to escort Raito home. Unexpectedly, Long Do actually took the initiative to submit an application form for an after-class activity. Not long after, in the principal's office of the first high school, two figures were facing each other across a desk. Standing on the inner side of the table was the principal, Adolf Pescarolo, who matched his suit and red wine glass very well. One could tell at a glance that he was an old gentleman. "Toshio, are you serious?" Looking at the application form, the old principal's eyes widened in disbelief. "Of course, don't you know what kind of environment this is? Instead of having a chaotic fight, it's better to let them vent their emotions in an orderly manner." "That doesn't sound like something you would say. But holding a martial arts tournament in school is somewhat risky." "You mean there's no risk if we let them do whatever they want? Someone will die." When Raito said the last four words, his tone slightly paused. Obviously, the person he said would die was not himself. Sigh. "That's true." The old principal couldn't help but sigh as he looked deeply at Raito. Of course, he knew what kind of person Raito Kiri was, and he also knew about the kid's family background. If the students really attacked Raito together, he didn't know if there would be any problems, but the students who attacked would definitely be in big trouble. "Then we'll hold a competition like this, but I'll have to find a security company to take care of the security." "Security company? No need, I'll introduce you to one. I guarantee they'll be strong and cheap." When he heard the old principal say that he wanted to find a security company, Raito's eyes suddenly widened as he found another way to make money. For Raito, money was something that could never be too much. Moreover, he wouldn't hesitate to make money. Therefore, after Raito made a call, the Rulong Security Company rushed to Dori First High School. With the help of this group of veterans, they quickly transformed the basketball court in the middle of the stadium into a shape similar to a ring, and arranged the thousands of seats around it properly. More than 100 bodyguards from the Rulong Security Company were waiting quietly inside and outside the stadium, waiting for the group of saltwater fishes who were coming to pay the money to compete. After connecting with the school's skyline, Raito logged into the First High School BBS and used the account he had just applied for to post a post that instantly blew up the entire campus. Title of the post: "Hello everyone, I'm Raito Kiri. If you're my brother, come and kill me. I'll be waiting for you at the first martial arts tournament." The content of the post was roughly that the first martial arts tournament had received the school's support and was in full swing preparations. It would be announced to everyone after school in the afternoon and so on. Sure enough, as soon as the post was posted, it was flooded with angry students. You fucking Raito Kiri actually dared to open a first martial arts tournament. And the most annoying thing is that you still want to collect money. We're looking for you to take revenge. You want to earn this little bit of money? That's too disgusting. Although $1,000 to watch the competition and $10,000 to participate in the competition were nothing to the students of this high school, the thought that the money might end up in Longdo's pocket made everyone furious. I want to beat him up. This money will be his medical expenses. No, let's just beat him to death. This money will be his funeral expenses. How much does that bastard look down on people? He actually wants to use this matter to make money. No, I have to call my cousin. He's a professional boxer. He must beat that bastard to death. Suddenly, the students on the forum became even angrier. Some of them even began to contact external aid. In any case, this first martial arts tournament did not say that only students from the school could participate. Just like this, under such a turbulent situation, time slowly passed and it was after school. Ring 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 ring. As the school bell rang, almost all the students rushed out of the classroom like the cafeteria was opening for lunch. They all rushed toward the gymnasium. Although everyone was very dissatisfied with the fact that they had to pay to watch this tournament, they still had to watch it. Moreover, although it was said that they had to pay, many people had already discussed it for a while. Everyone would squeeze in and see who could take the money. If I don't pay, what can you do? However, just as everyone arrived at the entrance of the gymnasium, a few brawny men in suits stopped them at the entrance. The spectator fee is 1,000 yuan. Pay up and enter. If you don't, scram. In front of thousands of students, the brawny man in a suit holding a loudspeaker at the entrance said mercilessly, as if he did not treat this group of little guys as human beings at all. Nonsense. This is a member of the Rulong Security Company. He originally came from Extreme Dao. Why would he be afraid of you little guys? Try to squeeze in if you have the ability. This. How about? Let's pay the money. Anyway, it's not much. Just when the group of people were at a loss at the entrance, someone finally couldn't help but pay the money first and walk in. Then, almost everyone began to line up to pay, and then walked into the gymnasium obediently, not daring to make a fuss. As for the other group of people who signed up for the tournament, after paying 10,000 yuan from another entrance, they directly entered the contestant lounge. They warmed up and exercised inside, ready to go out and teach that bastard a lesson at any time. Wow, is it finally going to start? The contestants in the contestant lounge look so powerful. They can be written into my novel. When more and more people entered the gymnasium, Yun Yang, who was sitting in the main spectator stand, couldn't help but clap her hands excitedly. She didn't seem nervous at all. They're just a bunch of idiots. They actually want to make a move on Raito. They're simply looking for their own deaths. Downia, who was also sitting in the main spectator stand, complained with a sour expression. After all, she knew what kind of level Raito was at. Even if everyone here worked together, they wouldn't be able to defeat him. Apart from Yunyang and Downia, there was only a total of 3 seats in the main spectator stand. The last person sitting in the main spectator stand was naturally the female protagonist of this incident, Kanzaki Colored Glaze. The main spectator stand was located in the area closest to the ring. The ordinary spectators could also see the 3 great beauties sitting side by side. It could be said that just seeing this scene alone was worth the ticket price. However, when Downia and Colored Glaze sat together, the two naturally wouldn't get along well. So Downia looked at Colored Glaze, who was sitting leisurely, and asked in a sarcastic tone, "Kanzaki-senpai, by the way, what's wrong with you this morning? Why did you do that kind of thing to Raito? Look, you've angered everyone." "What kind of thing?" "Helping him fix his necktie. Actually, that was his strong request. There's no other way. Who told Raito to like me so much?" After hearing Downia's words, Colored Glaze didn't even turn her head and ridiculed her. "You sneaky cat. Stinky mistress. You actually have the nerve to say such a lie. Watch your words. You didn't admit that you're his fiancé, right? Then what does it matter to you who Raito is with? What qualifications do you have to call me a mistress? You. If you're really his fiancé, then watch your fiancé closely. It's best to sleep in the same bed with him at night. But with your figure, Raito probably won't be interested." Speaking of this, Colored Glaze looked at Downia's chest with contempt and couldn't help but sneer disdainfully. Speaking of which, Colored Glaze's chest wasn't very big, but at least compared to Downia's chest, it was a relatively normal size, so she could still laugh at her. "I'll kill you. Bastard sneaky cat. I'll. Alright, each of you should stop talking. Please." Suddenly, Yunyang, who was sitting between the two, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She blocked Downia and turned her head to Colored Glaze. While the 3 beauties were fooling around on the main viewing platform, most of the spectators had already arrived. Narukai Otoni, who was wearing a fancy suit, held a microphone and walked onto the ring. He came to the middle of the ring and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Everyone, the first Do Lee First Martial Arts Tournament is about to begin. Now, let's welcome the first challenger, the friend of the uncle of the head of the boxing club, J.K. Smith." Under Narukai's enthusiastic introduction, a big black man wearing boxing shorts and bulging muscles, who looked like a professional, walked onto the ring. What the hell is this? Isn't this an active heavyweight boxer?" When they saw J.K. Smith, most of the audience was shocked, but a few people recognized his identity. "Isn't this a fight between students? Why is the first person to fight Raito a professional boxer? What the hell is the friend of the head of the boxing club?" At the same time, the head of the boxing club, Kamida, who was watching the live broadcast in the contestant lounge, suddenly sneered, "Heh, this is called all's fair in war. You're so sneaky, you actually called for outside help, and this level of outside help, won't that kid be beaten to death? That's right, if you find someone to beat him to the ground, what are we fighting for? We've already spent the money, you should let us go up and beat him up." For a moment, the other people in the players' lounge also laughed loudly as they watched the live broadcast. It was as if they could see Long Do being beaten to a pulp by this professional heavyweight boxer. Chapter 181. Indeed, everyone knew that Raito Kiri was the extreme Dao young master, so he must be very good at fighting. Not many ordinary high school students would be able to exchange blows with him. Everyone knew that. But what did it mean to be an active heavyweight boxer? Even if he stood there and let Raito hit him, a teenager would not be able to hurt him. The two of them were not on the same level at all. No, this match should not be able to continue, right? The host will definitely call for a stop. Seeing J.K. Smith enter the ring, the audience below the stage stared at the gorgeously dressed Narukai Otoni. They all thought that he would definitely stop the match. Who knew that Narukai did not even look at the heavyweight boxer? Instead, he waved his hand to the side and shouted excitedly, "Next. Let's welcome the champion of the Kyoto First Martial Arts Tournament. Eternal God, Raito Kiri, enter the stage." Clatter, 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 clatter. Clap, 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 clap. For a moment, a tsunami of applause and cheers filled the entire stadium. If one looked closely, this time the cheers and applause were not from ordinary students, but the security personnel of the Rulong Security Company. Although there were only a few hundred people, their momentum, voice, and applause seemed to be louder and more energetic than the thousands of audience here. It was a strong shock. But for the ordinary audience, it was not the momentum that shocked them, but, is Raito really going to fight? They watched as Long Do, who was wearing an ordinary school uniform, walked towards J.K. Smith in the ring without any regard for his family. Most of the people in the audience were extremely surprised. After all, no one dared to believe that Raito Kiri did not have any opinions about his opponent. What's going on? Is he looking for death? This match is obviously not right. Why won't he stop it? At this time, most of the audience could not help but think so. Generally speaking, the Kyoto First Martial Arts Tournament should be limited to the entire school, right? But the boxing department invited an active heavyweight boxer to be their external aid. How could this be? It felt like a certain school had organized a football match, and someone had invited the Brazilian team to play on their behalf. What was the point of competing? However, most people's surprised gazes did not affect Raito at all. He leisurely walked up to J.K. Smith. When the two of them stood close to each other, the difference in physique was even more obvious. J.K. Smith was a heavyweight boxer, with a height of 1.98 meters and a weight of nearly 100 kilograms. In comparison, the 16-year-old Raito Kiri was not short, but his overall figure was like a child compared to J.K. Smith. An adult beating a child. At least on the surface, this was the feeling that both sides gave off. Was it him? This little brat actually needs me to take action. This money is really easy to earn. Looking at the high school kid standing in front of him, J.K. Smith couldn't help but grin, revealing his neat white teeth. At this moment, Narukai raised his hand and shouted, "The contestants are ready. The competition begins." Was it really going to start? Raito Kiri was really going to fight that heavyweight boxer. The moment the competition began, J.K. Smith began to shake his body as if he was in a boxing match. He walked towards Raito with a mesmerizing smile on his face, and at the same time made provocative gestures with both hands. Not only that, he also said in perfect English, "Stinky brat, if you get out of the ring now, I'll let you live. How about it? Ha ha ha." And Raito did not react to this provocative words. Of course, the biggest reason was that he did not understand English. What are you blabbering on about, idiot? Do I even understand? Because he did not understand, Raito made an international gesture of contempt. He raised one hand, pointed his middle finger at J.K. Smith. "This stinky brat is looking for death. Watch me beat his brains out." Seeing that Raito still dared to be arrogant in front of him, J.K. Smith took a step forward. A right straight punch covered in anger fiercely hit Raito's head. As a heavyweight professional boxer, J.K. Smith naturally wore boxing gloves on the stage. The fist with the boxing gloves was like lightning, and it was like a small mountain smashing towards the opponent's head. A punch from a heavyweight boxer was enough to kill a person if it hit the head. It was already at the level of a lethal weapon. However, before the audience could exclaim in surprise, Raito made his move first. His gaze sharpened, and his right elbow quickly swung out, hitting the center of J.K. Smith's fist. Catcher. The moment the two collided, J.K. Smith heard a familiar sound of bones exploding. At the same time, the boxing gloves on his hand, along with the 5 fingers inside, burst open. There was a saying in the ancient martial arts world, "It's better to take 10 punches than 1 elbow." With Raito's current LV4 physique and his proficiency in ancient Bajikan, his elbow actually broke J.K. Smith's fist on the spot. Before the intense pain could reach his brain, another hand like an iron clamp had already grabbed this blockhead's neck, and picked him up like picking up a rag from the ground. The next moment, Raito twisted his body, clasped J.K. Smith's neck, and threw him out of the ring not far away. His 1.98-meter tall body, which weighed close to 100 kilograms, flew across the sky. Like a dummy that was thrown out, It flew a distance of 4 to 5 meters, and with a plop, it landed outside the center ring of the stadium. When J.K. Smith fell to the ground, this heavyweight boxer had already lost consciousness, and fainted with white foam coming out of his mouth. That was not the worst part. Anyone with a little bit of medical knowledge would know that his boxing career had come to an end when they saw this guy's fist, which was twisted into a weird shape with his gloves. Seeing the first challenger fly down in the blink of an eye, the entire stadium became extremely quiet, as if they had arrived at a funeral house. How is this possible? This is an active heavyweight boxer. How could he be defeated in an instant? Although everyone knew that Raito was very fierce in fighting, they did not expect him to be fierce to this extent. What kind of monster is he to defeat a professional heavyweight boxer at the age of a high school student? However, as the host, Narukai did not react to this shocking scene, but continued to shout, "The first challenger has been declared defeated. Next, let us welcome the second challenger, the head of the boxing department, Kamida Kawa." "What? It's my turn. It's my turn." When he heard the host's words, the head of the boxing department, who was watching in the resting area, suddenly shuddered. More than 10 seconds ago, he had proudly said, "I originally wanted to be the first one to fight, but he's a student of our school after all. I don't feel good hitting him, so I asked J.K. Smith to help me punish him." But when he realized that he was really going to fight, Kamida Kawa's legs started to tremble violently. A member of the boxing department beside him also trembled and came to his side, and said with a bitter smile, "Head, it's your turn, do your best." "Do my best. Do my best, you said it so easily, go fight that monster yourself, bastard." After trembling for a second, Kamida Kawa said to the staff not far away, "Sorry, my stomach doesn't feel well, I can't fight today, I want to forfeit." The staff looked at him and said coldly, "It's your choice to forfeit. Since that's the case, the third challenger, the head of the karate department, Koda Inuya, will fight." My stomach also hurts, I want to forfeit too." When he heard his name being called, the head of the karate department, Koda Inuya, also held his stomach and made my stomach hurt. "It hurts, look." It was obvious that the disease here had already shown signs of being transmitted from person to person. After Kamida Kawa and Koda Inu barking took the lead, the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and so on, all of the other challengers also refused to fight, citing various illnesses as reasons. There were many symptoms, not only stomach pain, but also cold, fever, headache, brain fever, bone fracture, cancer, AIDS, paranoia, and so on. It gave people the feeling that this wasn't a resting area, but a hospital's intensive care unit. Good Lord, there aren't many healthy people in the Dory First High School, right? Whoever's name is called will get sick. Are you holding a ward meeting here? After calling out the names in the contestant resting area, the staff member in charge of the roll call was speechless. He could only say, "Who wants to go on stage? Stand up now, okay? Don't waste any more time." Suddenly, all the young students in the resting area looked at each other, but no one dared to stand up. But this was to be expected. The current heavyweight boxer was already crippled, so it would be strange if these ordinary high school students dared to fight. No one wanted to live with their left hand for the rest of their life. So after about 10 minutes of stalemate, the host on the stage finally announced that the Dory First Martial Arts Tournament had come to an end. What? What the hell? That's it. No one dared to fight anymore. When the staff of the Rulong Security Company started to stop the spectators from leaving, there were still many students who had just paid and walked in. 1,000 yuan was completely wasted. But there was nothing they could do. After all, those who saw the match between Raito and J.K. Smith knew that this guy was not a normal person. He was more like an alien monster. The strongest and evilest high school student in history. After today's tournament, Raito not only received tens of millions of yuan, but also a very cool title. Moreover, the Egao BBS forum that was originally full of people immediately quieted down. Other than some people who dared to secretly curse Raito, no one dared to say anything stupid like a collective crusade. Was it not embarrassing enough? However, for the sake of safety, Rulong Security Company forbade the recording of this martial arts tournament. However, this time, the legend quickly spread through word of mouth. Among the people who were shocked by Raito's extraordinary skills and terrifying appearance, there were the other 4 extreme dojo in the Tokyo area. Therefore, that night, an invitation letter from another huge extreme dojo organization, the White Tiger Gang, was sent to Raito. Chapter 182. Speaking of the extreme Dao organizations in the Tokyo area, the Ryukyu group was not the only one. Although the Dragon Group founded by Tongshun Kazuma was a rather powerful extreme Dao group, there were also 4 other extreme Dao groups that were not inferior to the Dragon Group in all aspects. Psychedelic Soburo was headquartered in the Shibuya area. They mainly operated nightclubs and video cassettes. Big Dipper Alliance was headquartered in the Senma area. They mainly sold guns, ammunition, and all kinds of dangerous weapons. Black Snake Alliance was headquartered in the Shinjuku area. They mainly sold all kinds of anesthetics and illegal drugs. White Tiger Gang was also headquartered in the port area. They mainly sold money and collected protection fees. They were all powerful gangs in the Tokyo area. They all had their own strengths. They didn't have too many conflicts in their business. Therefore, they could coexist harmoniously. However, when Raito received the invitation from the White Tiger Gang's president, Karakawa Kaori, he looked at the letter in his hand and was confused. Tonight, your humble servant will be hosting a banquet in room 408 of the Star Python Apartments. I hope that your Highness Tong Sheng Raidu can come and have a drink with you. What the hell is this? After reading the letter from the White Tiger Gang's president, Raito handed it to Advisor Fujiki. Advisor Fujiki, who had been in this industry for his whole life, was more familiar with the extreme Dao. Raito didn't even know what kind of bird the White Tiger Gang was. Advisor Fujiki looked at the letter carefully and frowned. The White Tiger Gang's president has the same title as our team leader. He shouldn't have any bad ideas. It's just that the place of the banquet is a bit, Star Python Apartments. Who would treat people to a meal in an apartment? If not, it would be a banquet in a hotel. How shabby. No. Young master, this Star Python apartment isn't an ordinary apartment. I forgot to tell you this. Immediately, Consultant Fujiki scratched his head and explained the situation of this Star Python apartment one by one. This was because Kazuma and Fujiki didn't want Raito to enter this extreme Dao world. He had never told Raito a lot of things related to the gangs. This included this Star Python apartment and related matters. If one had to describe it in the simplest terms, this apartment would be a typical extreme Dao apartment. Everyone who lived here was a member of extreme Dao. Because of the uniqueness of this apartment, it had been used as a meeting place for extreme Dao cultivators since a long time ago. If there were any disputes between the two gangs, or if there was something that needed to be discussed, they would come to this Star Python apartment. Every gang also had their own rooms here. The management of this apartment was also managed and maintained by members from various gangs. Naturally, the Rulon Group, as a member of the Tokyo Kichi organization, also had its own room in the Star Python apartment, as well as its own management. I see, there's such a special place in Tokyo. After hearing Fujiki's explanation, Raito felt like he had seen a new world. That's right. The reason why Akuragawa invited you to the banquet is because he has something to discuss. You're not the only one that he invited. Oh. The other extreme Dao organizations are also invited. As far as I know, Psychedelic Soburo, Big Dipper Alliance, and Black Snake Alliance, these 3 large extreme Dao organizations in Tokyo, all received similar letters today. In other words, the president of the White Tiger Gang didn't just invite Raito, but also the other 4 extreme Dao leaders in Tokyo. The president of the White Tiger Gang, the hero Akuragawa. I think I've heard of his name before. He seems to be a person that is respected by his brothers. Of course, if our leader Kazuma isn't here, he would be the #1 hero in Tokyo. He's a very simple and loyal extreme Dao. Speaking until here, Fujiki handed over the information he had on Akuragawa. Raito took the information and looked at it. This guy was already more than 70 years old. He was like a living fossil in extreme Tao. Since the 60s and 70s, Akuragawa started to make a living at the docks, helping the Americans to move goods. At that time, due to the tension between labor and management, it was difficult to transport goods. Japanese gangsters took the opportunity to fill the gap and helped the Americans to transport goods. At the same time, the government also used extreme Tao to suppress dissidents, which gave extreme Tao organizations the best soil to take root. After many years of development, the group of extreme Tao people formed many famous extreme Tao organizations, including the hero Akuragawa. With his seniority in extreme Tao, Akuragawa's White Tiger Gang became more and more prosperous. However, they usually followed the rules and never bullied the weak. They also didn't involve themselves in some terrible industries. It could be said that they had their own principles. Therefore, it proved that the president of the White Tiger Gang was respected by all parties in the underworld. It could be said that hundreds of people responded to his call. However, after Raito finished reading the information, he said with disdain, "TSK. Isn't he just a lackey of the government? How shameless of him to call himself a hero. It can't be helped." Extreme Tao in that era was like that. However, Akuragawa didn't get involved with the government anymore. Instead, he focused on helping the weak. Is it true? I feel like there's something wrong with this old man. Although Fujiki also respected the president of the White Tiger Gang, Raito looked at the information in his hand and felt that something was wrong. He knew that the earliest extreme Tao was actually a lackey of the politicians. They helped the politicians do things that were inconvenient on the surface. Therefore, they were called the politicians' chamber pot. Although there were also extreme Tao like Ikuma who didn't rely on the politicians and were upright people, they were relatively few after all. Most of the extreme Tao were always inseparable from the game of money and power. What made Raito puzzled was why the White Tiger Gang invited him to a banquet at this time. Just yesterday, the great search for young criminals had just been launched in Tokyo, which made most of the Jido and similar organizations suffer greatly. Today, the White Tiger Gang sent someone to invite Raito. This made people feel that a storm was coming. In fact, it was indeed the case. The current situation was indeed a storm. When Raito decided to see what the president of the Akuragawa was doing, a meeting in the car also began. Around 6 o'clock in the afternoon, the hero Akuragawa came alone to a small shopping mall that looked inconspicuous. He was an old man wearing an old striped suit and a hat. He looked a little thin. Even from afar, one could feel the hardcore aura of the Showa era. After walking around the mall a few times, the old president passed by a boutique and left from the back door of the shop without saying a word. He followed a small path and walked directly into a deep alley. In the deepest part of the alley, there was a black car that looked inconspicuous. Before the old president walked in, the back door of the car opened by itself and welcomed him in. The car closed, started, and began to drive around the neighborhood. The driving speed wasn't too fast, just enough for the two people sitting in the back seat to talk easily. In addition to the president of the Akuragawa who just got in the car, there was also a woman in a black kimono sitting in the back. Her face was covered with a black veil. At first glance, her face couldn't be seen clearly, but from her figure, she should be very young. After the car drove away, the woman asked faintly, "President Akuragawa, how have you been?" Thanks to you, it's not bad." As the president of the Akuragawa answered, he lowered his head slightly and put on a very humble appearance. It was clear that he was at an absolute disadvantage in front of this woman. This woman's identity was obvious. "The invitations that I asked you to send out have been sent out, right? The other 4 have received them and have replied that they are willing to come." "Very good." The woman nodded and said with a cold smile, "As long as the Hero Alliance is 10% successful, the entire Tokyo's extreme Tao will be under your control, President Akuragawa." "I wouldn't dare. It should be under your control." Speaking to this point, the president of the Akuragawa hurriedly lowered his head, as if he felt that this woman was very terrifying. It was hard to imagine that an old man who was known as a hero in the extreme Tao would bow to such a young woman. None of the members of the White Tiger Gang had seen the president of the Akuragawa like this before, not even his own son. After the two of them talked about some more details, the president of the Akuragawa couldn't help but ask, you asked me to help you find the criminals who robbed and beat up your nephew, but we still haven't found them. What do you think? That doesn't matter. If we can find them, then we'll find them. If we can't, then so be it. It's not that important anyway. After all, the Tokyo Extreme Dao have been stirred up. That's the key. I see. In that case, they'll be more inclined to agree to our alliance. My lord, you're truly farsighted. There's no need to flatter me. The key is to do your job well. Go. Yes. After the woman said this, the car stopped. The president of the Akuragawa hurriedly got off and hurriedly rushed off into the distance. He was like an old dog that had been ordered by its owner to hunt. Looking at his back, the woman in the car smiled happily. Akuragawa. After the Extreme Dao Alliance is established, you'll be of little use to us. You want to change your identity after everything is over and take your family to American to retire? Hehe, you're dreaming. You want to clear your name after doing so many good deeds. When the time comes, your entire family will be fed to the fishes in the Tokyo Bay's river. Idiot. After leaving behind a cold gaze, the black car slowly drove away from this area as if it had never appeared. Chapter 183. That night, on a relatively remote street in Tokyo, two patrol officers in police uniforms were patrolling the street as usual. However, compared to these two weak patrolmen, the group of people walking nearby, who were either dressed in black, tight-fitting clothes, or dressed sloppily, were much more imposing. Wow, if you look carefully, there are a lot of Jido on this street. After walking for a while, the young patrol officer on the left couldn't help but say so. This street is an area sandwiched between several Jido disaster areas. People from various gangs will appear here. It can be said to be Jido Street, but the task of patrolling here is quite easy. The patrol officer on the right, who looked older, shook his head and said in a relaxed tone, "Easy? Why is it easy? Because there is an unspoken rule on this street. Gangs can't make trouble here. Even if there is a dispute, they can only use their fists and can't use any weapons. Otherwise, they will be attacked by the Jido world." Oh, I see. They have such a rule. There is an apartment over there. It looks quite harmonious. As they walked, the young patrol officer looked at the seemingly ordinary apartment in the middle of the street and couldn't help but reach out and point there. It was a 20-story, ordinary-looking residential apartment. Because it was already night time, there were sparkling lights all over the place. Idiot. Don't point your finger. But at this moment, the older patrol officer reached out and pressed down the young man's hand, hurriedly pressing him down. What? What's wrong? That is the Star Python apartment. It is a place bought and managed by many Jido leaders in Tokyo. All Jido members live there. It is a completely lawless area. You can't just point at it. When the Star Python apartment was mentioned, a drop of cold sweat fell from the old patrol officer's forehead. Anyone who had stayed on this street would know how terrifying the Star Python apartment was. There were more than 4 digits of Jido members living in this apartment all year round. They were from the Rulone Group, White Tiger Gang, Psychedelic Soburo, Big Dipper Alliance, and Black Snake Alliance. Therefore, it was not as simple as a mix of crooks and honest folk. It was a complete underground world. The patrolmen working in the surrounding area all knew that no matter what happened, they should never enter the Star Python apartment. This was because once they entered, there was no guarantee that they would be able to walk out alive. What a terrifying place. Just as the young patrolman who had just been transferred here was trembling as he looked at the Star Python apartment, the old patrolman's eyes widened slightly as he looked at the vehicles near the apartment. Was it my imagination? Why do I feel like there are a lot of cars around the apartment today? According to the experience of the old patrol officer, there shouldn't be so many cars parked near the apartment every day, but today, it was already full. However, this was to be expected. After all, in room 408 of the Star Python apartment, which was also the private room of the White Tiger Gang's president, Akane Orokowa. A grand banquet of the extreme path world was slowly unfolding. As the host of tonight's banquet, Karakawa Tsunori had already changed into a majestic kimono and was waiting in the room. The interior of the room was very simple. Other than a round table and 6 seats in the middle, there were basically no decorations. The decoration of such a spacious room was mainly to prevent certain people from installing some bugs or pinhole cameras in the room. After all, what was about to happen here was not a conversation that could be seen in the light of day. Creak. As the room door was forcefully pushed open, a pair of very hip-hop-looking young brothers walked in. Of the 2 men, one was tall and fat, the other was short and thin. Both of them wore sunglasses, very trendy oversized t-shirts and shorts, and their hair was combed into a very stylish hairstyle. At first glance, they looked like hip-hop people. When the 2 young men walked into the room, Karakawa Tsunori smiled and greeted, "Brother San Lang, long time no see." "That's for sure. At the very least, it'll take half a year." "President Karakawa, you're old and healthy. You're not poked by needles, fut." Compared to Karakawa Tsunori's formal greeting, the San Lang brothers replied with a very messy rap-style speech. However, the 2 brothers' rap did not rhyme at all, and it sounded very bad. It felt like there was something wrong with their heads. In fact, that was indeed the case. As the bosses of the extreme gang psychedelic San Lang that mainly sold anesthetics, the 2 brothers' hobby was to eat all kinds of trendy pills. It was impossible to say that there was nothing wrong with their heads. After the 2 bosses of psychedelic San Lang took their seats, a very mature and beautiful woman in an evening gown walked in right after. This woman looked about 30 years old, which was the age to fully emit the charm of a woman. Coupled with her decent evening gown and obviously well-groomed appearance, she looked as eye-catching as a celebrity or model. If there was no special introduction, perhaps no one would have thought that such a beautiful woman was the leader of the Triad Syndicate that mainly operated nightclubs and sold strange videotapes, Tessa. Tessa's facial features were clearly different from East Asians. She had a strong South Asian style. She should be a woman from Thailand. Probably a woman. After coming in, Tessa smiled and greeted with a hoarse voice, "President Karakawa, it's great to see that you're still so healthy." "Thank you, Ms. Tessa. Please sit." After nodding and inviting Ms. Tessa to sit in another seat, the 4th member of the meeting finally arrived. Different from the previous 3, the 4th middle-aged man who came in did not greet anyone in the room. Instead, he looked at the people around the table, nodded slightly, and walked to his seat. He looked about 40 years old, and his determined face was full of hardships. He gave people the feeling that he had been through a lot. One look and you could tell that he was a very reliable man. Of course, whether or not this man named Kai Yang and his Big Dipper alliance were reliable depended on whether or not the money you prepared was enough. If you have enough money, this man from a neighboring country will sell you all the guns and equipment he collected from all over the world. Otherwise, get out of my sight. At this moment, the leaders of the 4 extreme path organizations had gathered together. White Tiger Society, Psychedelic Soburo, Triad Syndicate, and Big Dipper Alliance. These 4 extreme dojos were all veterans in the Tokyo area. They were also big shots in the underground society who could cause an earthquake with a single move. But after waiting for a while, the last participant still hadn't arrived, which made the Saburo brothers a little unhappy. There's still one person left. That kid is the youngest, so he should be the first to arrive. Courtesy, no. Maybe he's scared and doesn't dare to come. After all, he's just a little brat. While waiting, the San Lang brothers began to mock the last participant one after another. From their tone and words, it was clear that the 2 brothers didn't think highly of the young master of the Rulon group, Raito Kiri. Don't say that. Hearing that, Tessa smiled and said, previously, he managed to escape from being hunted down by the entire underground world. Furthermore, you all know that he easily defeated a heavyweight boxer yesterday. He's not as simple as an ordinary kid. Naturally, the four extreme grade leaders knew the details of Tong Sheng Longdo's deeds. Not long ago, during the night of the pursuit, some of their subordinates also participated in the pursuit of Raito and Downia. After all, it was a huge sum of 1 billion, who wouldn't want to make money? From the previous night of the pursuit, Raito Kiri was indeed very terrifying. At the age of 16, he was able to lead a little girl and kill hundreds of hunters of the underground world. This wasn't just a rumor of bravery that was spread around on the streets. It was a fact. Therefore, very few people dared to look down on Raito. He really wasn't a normal 16-year-old brat. But even so, the Soburo brothers still snorted and said, "He's really good at fighting, but unfortunately, he doesn't know the rules. In the underworld, fighting isn't enough." That's right, that's right. As a junior, he actually dared to be late. He has no respect for us seniors. F***CK Creek. But just as the Soburo brothers were mercilessly mocking and cursing Raito, the door of the room was finally opened again. Under everyone's different gazes, Raito, who was wearing a very handsome and dignified suit, slowly walked toward the round table. Today's Raito was obviously different from usual. Because he was going to attend a formal occasion, he wore a three-piece business suit made of silk and satin. Compared to wool, silk and satin were more noble and luxurious. Together with the wide collar and cross tie, it could create a three-dimensional feeling of facial features, making him look more robust and stable. With this kind of dressing and his strong aura, Raito didn't look like a 16-year-old high school student at all. He even looked like a super big boss that could suppress the four extreme bosses. This is Raito Kiri? Is he really only 16 years old? After feeling the terrifying aura of this young man, the rest of the people were shocked by him. But Soburo couldn't help but mutter, "TSK, what's with the pretense?" After hearing Soburo's words, Raito, who was walking toward the chair, immediately turned around and came in front of the extreme boss who was wearing a hip-hop outfit. In the room where these extreme bosses were gathered, Raito looked at Soburo, who was sitting on the chair with a condescending gaze as if he was looking at trash. At the same time, he asked indifferently, "What did you say just now?" Chapter 184. In fact, Xiaosaburo was just casually saying that. He didn't think that Raito would actually directly look for him. And from this guy's expression and tone, this young master of the Rulong group seems to be looking for trouble. For a moment, the originally silent atmosphere in the room became even more austere. It was as if even the sound of a needle dropping could be heard clearly. Xiaosaburo was stared at by Raito's sharp eyes, and a drop of cold sweat fell from his forehead. He had to admit that this guy dressed like a godfather standing in front of him and looking at him with contempt, this feeling was quite intimidating. Especially when he knew that Raito Kiri was a monster with at least hundreds of lives in his hands, this pressure was even more exaggerated. It was simply enough to make people pee their pants. Seeing that Xiaosaburo didn't dare to reply, Raito stretched out his hand and knocked on the table in front of him. He continued to ask, "I seem to have heard you say something about me. I didn't hear it clearly. Try saying it again." Although he was momentarily intimidated by Raito's imposing manner, Xiaosaburo was still the leader of the extreme Dao organization Psychedelic Soburo. He had more than 1,000 brothers under him. Naturally, he couldn't continue to be bullied like this. So he stood up and said with a fierce tone, "Stinky brat, you're looking for trouble, right? Who's the one looking for trouble, don't you know? Don't look for trouble first and then pretend to be innocent. You're late, so what if we say a few words to you?" Hearing this, Raito sneered, then stretched out his hand and patted his suit, mocking, "Is this a kindergarten? You like to be punctual? Then if you're here on time, should I give you a little red flower as a reward? If you hurt your brain from taking drugs, go get it treated. Soaking in these things every day won't end well. Sooner or later, you'll die from eating, stinky devil. You're fucking tired of living. When Fatty Subaru heard that it was not a sarcastic remark, but an insult directed at his brother's nose, he, who had never been ridiculed like this, suddenly jumped up from his seat. Unlike Pang Sanlang, although Pang Sanlang looked fat, his body was very strong. It could even be said that he was strong to the point of being unnatural. In psychedelic Soburo, Skinny Soburo was in charge of making all kinds of plans and managing the gang. He was the leader of the brain faction. Fat Soburo was in charge of killing the enemy. He was the leader of the fighting faction. This combination of fat and thin was one of the main reasons why the organization had developed to its current state. At this moment, Pang Sanlang was like a leopard hunting its prey as he pounced towards Raito, who was not far away. His palm suddenly grabbed the little bastard's head. His widely opened palm was like a huge fan, almost able to wrap an adult's head within it. Then, with just a little bit of force, he could crush the skull. Of course, Pang Sanlang's strength was not completely from his innate strength and training. It was also due to the effects of many forbidden drugs. Psychedelic Soburo was in the business of selling drugs. Naturally, he had the means to buy many high-grade steroid drugs and forbidden drugs that could release the human body's limits. Although the side effects of these drugs were huge, Pang Sanlang, who lived on the edge of a knife, naturally did not care about these small matters. Instead, he usually ate all kinds of forbidden drugs as if they were jelly beans. The result of taking medicine like this was that Pang Sanlang's physique, which was already different from ordinary people, became even stronger. He was as strong as an ox, and he once tried to stand after being shot by a pistol 7 or 8 times. He was even able to rush over and crush the gunman's skull. But no matter what, the fact that Do Long and Subaru Long had suddenly started fighting was completely out of line for President Orokawa, who had called for this meeting. "Wait, you guys." Thus, Orokawa hurriedly stood up and wanted to stop the two, but it was all too late. Raito, who was attacked, flashed with an even faster speed. In the next moment, his figure appeared 2 meters high in the air. Immediately after, his left hand formed a claw and accurately landed on Pang Sanlang's hand. This scene, at first glance, looked like an eagle hunting its prey, but also like a fierce tiger brandishing its claws. In short, the two people's hands tightly clasped together with 5 fingers. This little bastard's speed is so fast. After Raito closed in on him, Pang Sanlang was shocked by his lightning-like movements. But he immediately showed a disdainful smile. "But what's the use of being fast? This idiot actually wants to compete with me in grip strength. Who doesn't know that Pang Sanlang's strength is the strongest in Tokyo? Arth. So painful." Before Pang Sanlang could finish this confident thought in his heart, a voice suddenly rang out. He felt a heart-wrenching pain from his right hand. It was as if someone was using an iron clamp to clamp his bones. In terms of hand strength, how could Pang Sanlang compare with the demon child Saitu from Saitu Guildhall? Saitu was a genuine martial arts master. His kung fu was unparalleled in the world. His grip strength could crush steel. But even if Saitu had entered the Dao, he still couldn't gain the upper hand when he shook hands with Raito in the Tokyo Emperor Hotel not long ago, let alone a mere druggie. This wasn't the end. After squeezing Pang Sanlang's hand until the bones almost broke, Raito took the opportunity to flip his hand. Pang Sanlang's wrist was in pain, and he had no choice but to kneel on the ground. Plop! A muffled sound was heard. Under the stunned gaze of everyone in the room, Pang Sanlang's wrist was pressed to the ground. His face showed an expression of extreme pain, but he was almost unable to move. "This won't do, big guy. What's the benefit of taking so many drugs? Other than scaring some trash, if you meet an expert like me, you will be played like a pig." When forcing a big guy to kneel on the ground, Raito didn't forget to use a mocking tone to say to him. Seeing that Pang Sanlang was pressed to the point that he couldn't breathe, and Pang Sanlang was shivering, President Orokawa hurriedly said, "Young Master Raito, even if you don't give them face, you have to give face to me, the host, right? What's the point of fighting and killing here?" "That's right. What's the point of fighting and killing here? Remember next time, don't make a move on an enemy that you can't beat. Not everyone is as benevolent as me." After hearing President Orokawa's words, Raito let go of the big guy in his hand, and then said to the two brothers with a smile, "Beast. Beast." After being taught a lesson by Raito, the Sanlang brothers could only dejectedly return to their original seats and didn't dare to provoke any more. Hee. I don't remember any grudges between the Rulong group and the psychedelic Sanlang. Although the two brothers' mouths are indeed a bit cheap, but young Master Raito doesn't need to be so angry. Just as Raito sat down, the leader of the Black Snake Alliance, Tessa, who was sitting next to him, asked with a smile. There is indeed no grudges, then I just look down on drug sellers. After glancing at the Sanlang brothers, Raito seriously said to them, "In the future, if I see your drugs appear in my territory, I will stuff all the drugs and explosives into your nostrils. I will do what I say." Okay, the meeting officially begins. This time, I have something to say to everyone. When Baron Creek saw the Sanlang brothers' flushed faces, he hurriedly sighed and forcefully steered the conversation in the right direction. Really, why is this Raito Kiri so difficult to deal with? He's simply a madman, he doesn't care about anyone. Originally, according to President Orokawa's idea, Raito Kiri was the youngest among all the leaders here, so he should be the easiest to deal with. After all, the one who sat on the same level as the four leaders before was Hitomi Kazuma. Now that Kazuma wasn't in Nippon, a 16-year-old boy shouldn't be able to cause any trouble. Who knew that from the way he looked for a fight as soon as he arrived, this guy was 100 times more arrogant than his father, and he clearly didn't have any respect for these seniors. Sigh. Difficult to deal with. Forget it, I hope he can understand human language. When all the leaders sat at the table, Orokawa said seriously, regarding the incident that happened in Nippon yesterday, everyone should know about it. Is President Orokawa referring to the incident where the Metropolitan Police Department forced us to hand over the information of our members? After hearing this, Tessa was the first to react, and the other members also understood. Just yesterday afternoon, the Metropolitan Police Department indiscriminately demanded that all the Jigakudo in Tokyo submit and hand over the information of all the young members of their organization. This information included name, age, height, appearance, physique, weight, fingerprints, and so on. It was all very important personal information. This was simply outrageous in the eyes of the extreme do. After all, if so much information was handed over, wouldn't it be very troublesome for the brothers whose information was collected in the future? Would they come to find them if they did something? After all, they were in the side door. How could they hand over such important information to the police? It was simply suicide. But the problem was that the attitude of the Metropolitan Police Department was very strong this time. It was obvious that whoever didn't cooperate, they wouldn't be able to survive in Nippon in the future, even if they had the backing of the emperor. Under this tough attitude that completely ignored the law, the other extreme do were like the Rulong group. They had no choice but to hand over the information of some of their members. Don't you have any thoughts about this situation? How could we not have any thoughts? Bastard police. Hearing President Orokawa's provocative question, the Soburo brothers couldn't help but slap the table. After slapping, Soburo glanced at Raito. After seeing that he didn't have any reaction, he said, "Those guys have become more and more excessive in recent years. They simply don't give us a way out. If this continues, no one will be able to survive. Yes, if this continues, the extreme do in the Nippon area, which is us, will gradually be forced to the point of disbanding. President Orokawa, how do you plan to solve this?" "Ahum, if you trust me, I plan to form a hero alliance." Everyone will unite and fight against the Metropolitan Police Department's despicable methods. Under the conversation of the two, the president of the White Tiger Gang finally revealed his true purpose. Chapter 185. From the very beginning, President Orokowa was very confident about the establishment of the Ranchia Alliance. After all, at this critical juncture, all the extreme organizations in Tokyo were in a state of panic, and they urgently needed a stabilizing force to stabilize themselves and the mood of the organization. Under such circumstances, the famous Ranchia Alliance, took the initiative to stand up and lead everyone to resist the rude treatment of the Metropolitan Police Department. I was simply like a savior. In addition to this, there was another reason that made Orokowa feel very confident, and that was that psychedelic Saburo was originally one of them. Although most people didn't know this, even Saburo didn't know. In fact, psychedelic Saburo and White Tiger Gang were originally under the same boss. Both Orokowa and Saburo had been recruited by that lady long ago, and gradually reached their current position under her support. In other words, among the current 5 Kyoto organizations in Tokyo, 2/5 of the forces were originally one of them. As long as one of the other 3 agreed, the other 2 would be forced to follow. Otherwise, once the Ranchia Alliance was formed, the organizations that were excluded would be subjected to all kinds of internal and external pressure. Under such circumstances, no organization could withstand it. However, if the Ranchia Alliance was really formed according to Orokowa's idea, it would indeed reduce a lot of pressure for all the Kyoto organizations present. First of all, because of the formation of the alliance, the members of each Kyoto organization could all be added together, forming a huge force of tens of thousands of people. Under the unified management of this huge force, coupled with the unified allocation of the best team of lawyers, not only could they fight for the greatest right to speak in the dialogue with the Metropolitan Police Department, but they could also maximize the safety of their own industries to the greatest extent. Moreover, for example, the nightclub and videotape industry of the Black Snake Alliance, the anesthetic and forbidden drug industry of the psychedelic Saburo, the armed sales industry of the Big Dipper Alliance, and so on, were originally mutually beneficial. As long as everyone reached an agreement, these industries could also be interpenetrated. Under the care and support of the Rulon Group and the White Tiger Gang, they could even smoothly reach any corner of the country. At that time, the huge Kyoto Alliance from Tokyo would annex the other Kyoto organizations in Japan one by one, and its territory would become bigger and bigger. In the end, it could even sell its own industries overseas. At that time, the monetary benefits that the 5 great extreme DAOs could obtain would probably be tens of times more than what they currently had. In other words, what Karakawa Genesis wanted to establish was not just a Ranchia Alliance, but an underground empire. An empire ruled by the extreme DAO, a powerful armed force that even the Metropolitan Police Department couldn't do anything to, and a world-class crocodile that was enough to leave their name in the annals of history. Therefore, when Akane Orokowa expressed his thoughts, there was an uproar around the table. It had to be said that Karakawa Chuang's eloquence was excellent. Moreover, the content of what he said had been carefully arranged. It was easy to listen to it and make one's blood boil. This level of verbal skill was a necessary basic skill for a politician, but there weren't many people who could hone it to this level. Therefore, it seemed that Karakawa Tsunori was particularly trustworthy. Thus, Saburo couldn't help but be so excited that his eyes lit up. He waved his hands and used his sharp voice to shout, "Great! This is exactly what we want! Ha 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 ha! Indeed!" Tessa from the Black Snake Alliance also laughed and said, "In this situation, it would be great if someone could come out and take charge of the situation. After all, my territory is also in trouble." Indeed. If we can make more money and secure more sales channels, I won't object. The leader of the Big Dipper Alliance, Kai Yang, also nodded and used the simplest words to express his support. Indeed, when Karakawa Tsunori made this suggestion, logically speaking, no one should disagree. After all, there were so many people targeting the extreme DAO out there. If everyone fought on their own, they would be nibbled away one by one. This was especially true for organizations like the Black Snake Alliance and the Big Dipper Alliance, which focused on profit-making. The stricter the laws of the world were, the more disadvantageous it would be for their business. They also needed a strong protective umbrella. Moreover, after forming an alliance, everyone would be able to make tens of times more money. Who wouldn't want to do such a good thing? Of course, thinking about it was just thinking. Whether or not he could actually do it was another matter altogether. Karakawa Tsunori described a huge and beautiful blueprint for everyone present, but he knew that it was just bait to attract these idiots. Just like all professional politicians, when they made some promises, their goal was to get the votes in other people's hands. As for what would happen after they got the votes, who would care? After all, what was done, and it was up to them to explain or not to explain. At that time, as long as the Ranchia alliance was formed, Karakawa Tsunori and Soburo would quickly clean up the other three extreme Dao with the help of their boss and replace them with their own people. At that time, that person would be the uncrowned king of the entire Japanese underground world. In addition to the forces that she already controlled, it could be said that she could control the existence of this country. Very good, looks like Tessa and Kai Yang have no problems. Only this kid is left. After hearing Tessa and Kai Yang's support, Karakawa Tsunori smiled in his heart, then he looked at the only one who didn't say anything, the young master of the Rulon group, Raito Kiri. Since Karakawa Tsunori expressed his intention to form the Ranchia alliance, Raito didn't say anything. It wasn't until Karakawa Tsunori looked at him that the young master slowly raised his head. Very good. Raito showed a happy smile and clapped. President Karakawa can have such a bold idea and broaden your vision. You are indeed a senior in the underworld. You're too polite. We're all here to make a living. We just want to eat our fill and wear warm clothes. This old man is just taking advantage of the situation. After replying to Raito with a smile, Karakawa Tsunori looked at Soburo next to him. Soburo suddenly stood up and said seriously, "But although it's an alliance, we still need a leader." After all, soldiers can't move without a general, and snakes can't move without a leader. Someone needs to be able to coordinate everything. Yoho, I didn't expect a drug addict like you to be so cultured. Not bad, not bad. Ahem. Ignoring Longdo's mockery, Subaru continued, to be the leader of this alliance, you must first have enough experience in this industry. Only then will you be able to convince the masses. Secondly, you must have enough ability to do things well. That's how it should be. Kai Yang nodded. Since that's the case, I'm sure everyone here knows who the leader of the alliance will be, right? At this point, Subaru cast his gaze towards President Orokawa, who was sitting upright and ready to stand up and speak at any moment. That's right, he is. Originally, Soburo stood up and was about to extend his hand to President Orokawa, who was next to him, and invite him out as if he was introducing an award-winning celebrity. But just as Soburo extended his hand, a figure quickly appeared between him and President Karakawa. Aya, Soburo, you're too polite. I know I'm very good, but there's no need to invite me out with such fanfare. Under everyone's shocked gazes, Raito suddenly appeared in front of Soburo and grabbed his hand. Then, he shook it up and down with a smile on his face. At first glance, it seemed like Soburo was going to recommend Raito as the leader of the Ranchia alliance. When this strange situation occurred, Soburo and Karakawa Tsunori were instantly stunned. Was there a mistake? This kid was too shameless. How could he come out and cut him off? After coming to his senses, Soburo hurriedly shook off Raito's hand. He gulped and said with a smile, "I'm sorry, young Master Raito. The person I'm talking about isn't you. I'm talking about President Karakawa. Not me." Hearing this, Raito squinted his eyes and asked in an unhappy tone, "What were the two conditions you said to be the leader? Say it again." First, you have to have enough experience in this industry. Second, you have to have enough ability. You seem to. I don't have experience. I don't have ability. Suddenly, Raito seemed to have heard something unbelievable. He raised his hands and said in a serious tone, "How many years have I been in this industry? At the very least, it should be a few months, right? That's not considered experience. I just beat up your brother. Isn't that ability? A few months. A few months. What the hell are you talking about? And beating up my brother counts as ability? If it wasn't for the fact that the person who said those words was the willful and overbearing Tong Sheng Ryudu, Saburo really wanted to go up and slap him away. After all, everyone present here was an extreme Dao leader who had been in this business for at least 10 years. There was even an extreme Dao living fossil like Orokawa Chuangzu here. How could someone like Orokawa Chuangzu, who had only been in the dragon battle for a few months, be shameless enough to talk about it? You're really shameless, right? That's right, Raito really wasn't shameless. After all, as long as he wasn't shameless, others would be the ones to be embarrassed. This kid, he seems to be trying to cause trouble. Don't tell me he really wants to steal my position as the leader. Seeing Raito Kiri jump out and tease Saburo, who was in charge of being the supporting character, Karakawa Tsunori felt something was amiss. Karakawa Tsunori finally felt that something was amiss, as if the train was about to derail. Chapter 186. This Ranshia alliance might not be that important to other people, but to Karakawa, it was his life. This was not a metaphor, but a reality. If Karakawa couldn't complete this mission and gather all of Tokyo's Extreme Dao into an Extreme Dao alliance and offer them to that person, then this Extreme Dao alliance would be destroyed. Then, the life of this Extreme Dao living fossil would disappear along with the failure of this mission. He was very clear about this. Karakawa was over 70 years old, but he still didn't want to die. Not only did he not want to die, but he also had a son, a daughter, and a grandson. Karakawa didn't want his family to die. For this Ranshia alliance was willing to sacrifice all of Tokyo's Extreme Dao without caring about other people's lives. Anyway, I'm doing this for my family, so they should forgive me. Orokawa Tsunori had seen in some movies that no matter how many bad things the villain did in the movie did, as long as he did it for his father, mother, son, or daughter, he would be able to clear his name immediately. Humans were such simple creatures. In other words, sympathy was such a cheap and useful thing. However, compared to clearing his name, Karakawa cared more about his mission. First, he had to complete the Ranshia alliance and become the president. Hence, when Baron Chuan saw Long Do suddenly appear to steal the limelight, his gaze instantly sharpened. Sensing Karakawa's anger, Saburo hurriedly said, "Young Master Raito, I don't care if you want to make fun of me, but you can't joke about being the president." "What?" Raito sneered, "You think I'm joking? You think I don't deserve to be the president? You know what you're doing, right?" If Saburo had enough confidence, he would have shouted this out, but he didn't dare. Therefore, the leader of the psychedelic trio had no choice but to look at the other two leaders, Tessa of the Black Snake Alliance and Kai Yang of the Big Dipper Alliance, as if he wanted them to say something. In fact, from the very beginning, as long as the real chivalrous alliance was formed, there was nothing to discuss about the alliance leader. Everyone was well aware of this. Psychedelic San Lang and his brother looked sloppy, so it was hard for them to convince the crowd. Although Miss Tessa from the Black Snake Alliance was capable, she was in the nightclub business and didn't have enough presence. Although Kai Yang from the Big Dipper Alliance had a strong presence, he wasn't good with words and didn't like to communicate with others. As for the Rulone group, if Kazuma Kirishima was still around, he would be qualified to become the leader. However, it was not Kirishima who came, but his son, Raito. Please, a 16-year-old kid leading the entire Kyoto in Tokyo and becoming the leader of 10,000 people, no one would believe it. If he really did that, wouldn't the Ranshia alliance become a joke? Thus, Saburo felt that as long as Kai Yang and Tessa weren't stupid, they would definitely not push the position of leader to Raito. And if the two of them wanted to sit in this position, it would be impossible for them to do so under the joint efforts of Saburo and Shirakawa Tsunori. It had to be said that Saburo's thinking made sense. After being glanced at by him, Tessa couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. "Young Master Raito, choosing a leader is a serious matter. It doesn't seem good to make such a ruckus." "Indeed. Also, you guys won't be able to come up with a result. Why don't we use the simplest method, an anonymous vote?" Other than Tessa, Kai Yang, who was sitting at the side, was silent for a while, then he made a very constructive suggestion. Voting. Since there were 5 people here, whoever felt the most suitable to be the leader could directly write their answer on a piece of paper and vote anonymously. In the end, the person with the most votes would be the leader of the Ranxia Alliance. All the other members would have to respect him and listen to his orders. What? This guy Kai Yang still knows how to say something nice. After hearing Kai Yang's suggestion, Akuragawa Tsunori quickly said, "Yes, this old man agrees. Not only is this efficient, but it can also avoid gossip." Voting. Are you sure you want to do this? Raito frowned when he heard this. He put on an unhappy face. Voting is the fairest way. Young Master Rulong Group, if you don't want to, you don't have to participate. Kai Yang glanced at Raito and said in an emotionless tone. And Tessa on the side added, "Yes, and before voting, we have to write a written pledge to prove that we obey the results of this vote and that we absolutely respect the leader's leadership. Otherwise, it would be boring if we don't admit it after voting." Writing a pledge? That's good. Immediately, Shaosaburo also quickly shouted, "I support. If you want to make a living, you have to pay attention to credibility. Write it clearly in black and white and put your fingerprint. I guarantee that no matter what the result is, you can't go back on your words." That makes sense. Then go get someone to bring paper, pen, and ink. Seeing that things were developing in the direction he wanted to see the most, President Akuragawa also quickly ordered the subordinates waiting outside to prepare paper, pen, and ink. In the world of extreme Dao, as long as the signature and fingerprint were put, it meant that the pledge was effective. If it was violated, it would be a crime of disobedience. The lightest punishment would be cutting off the finger as an apology. After President Huang Chuan picked up a pen and paper and wrote down the formation document of the Ranxia Alliance, he signed his name and left his handprint first. The document was then passed to everyone's hands. Shaosaburo, Tessa, and Kai Yang looked at the document, then signed their names and pressed their fingerprint on it. They all agreed with the content written on the document. When it was Raito's turn, he picked up the document and looked at it again and again. He looked very unhappy. "Here. Ha 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 ha. Stinky brat, you have nothing to say now." Seeing his unhappy look, Shaosaburo couldn't help but laugh in his heart. Now, the Rulong Group had a difficult choice in front of them. Raito could either choose to vote or leave with a sullen face. However, if Raito left, then his Rulong Group would definitely be ostracized by the Ranxia Alliance. With all kinds of internal and external troubles, there was no doubt that the Rulong Group's future path would be very difficult to walk. "Fine, I'll sign it. I'm not afraid of you." After looking at it for a few seconds, Raito signed his name and pressed his fingerprint on it. Very good, the fish was in the net and the dog was in the cage. Now it was time to close the net. Then, under the arrangement of President Orokawa, who had a smile on his face, the group members outside brought in a box, a few blank slips of paper, and a ballpoint pen. "Now, let's start the voting. No matter who votes, you can't complain about the final result. This is written in black and white. Does anyone have any objections?" "No. No problem. Let's do it." Other than Raito, who snorted unhappily, the others agreed very quickly. They all turned around and wrote down their candidate for the alliance leader on the slips of paper. The box where the slips of paper were placed was checked by everyone one by one to ensure that there were no traps inside. In other words, the results of this vote would definitely not have any problems with fraud. Great, the mission that the Lord had given them was finally about to be completed. After watching everyone toss their slips of paper into the ballot box, Baron Chuan breathed out a sigh of relief as he tossed the slip of paper with his name into the box. God knew how much pressure he was under in today's meeting. After all, if the alliance failed this time, the result would be very ugly. Orokawa Chuang couldn't lose. He couldn't afford to lose. However, even though Raito Kiri was involved in the process, the final result shouldn't be a problem. After everyone finished voting, Orokowa Chuang said with a smile, "Then let's not waste any more time. As the host, I will count the votes on the spot." Xiao Saburo quickly said, "Of course, President Orokowa, please." So, Orokowa Chuang turned the box in the center of the table upside down and let the 5 slips of paper fall on the table. He reached out his hand that was so old that his skin was sticking to his bones. He gently picked up one of the slips of paper and opened it in front of the other 4 people. On the first slip of paper, the familiar name Orokowa Chuang was written. "It's me. Thank you for your support." After seeing his name, Orokowa Chuang pretended to be surprised and nodded to the other 4 people. Then, he continued to open the second slip of paper. However, the name that came out wasn't his. It was Raito Kiri in big letters. "TSK, this brat actually wants to vote for me. He really doesn't know what he's doing." After putting aside the slip of paper with Raito's name, President Orokowa Chuang shook his head and continued to open the third slip of paper. The third slip of paper was very normal. The name Orokowa Chuang was still written on it. That's right. Other than that brat himself, who else would vote for him? However, the president of the White Tiger Gang relaxed and opened the 4th and 5th slips of paper. The names that came out of the 2 slips of paper made this extreme-grade living fossil who had been in extreme grade for decades almost pop his eyes out. This was because the last 2 slips of paper had the name Raito Kiri neatly written on them. In other words, it was 3-2. This time, the candidate for the leader of the Runxia Alliance was Ryu Tongsheng. Chapter 187. After this terrifying result appeared, Akakawa Chuangsha felt his vision go dark and he almost fainted on the spot. How? How is this possible? This is impossible. Is there something wrong with my eyes? He quickly put his hand on his forehead and looked at the words on the notes again and again. Akakawa Chuangsha, Raito Kiri. These 2 names did not have a single word that was the same. It was impossible to misread them, and it was even more impossible to miswrite them. Wait. This is not right. This is impossible. This is. Just as President Orokowa was shocked silly by this unexpected scene, Subaru abruptly slammed the table and looked at the other 3 people as if he had seen a ghost. However, when Xiao Saburo looked at Raito, Tessa, and Kai Yang, he realized that these 3 people did not seem to be surprised by this unexpected result at all. Instead, they looked calm. Something's wrong. We've been tricked. These 3 people must have discussed this beforehand. Xiao Saburo was an old fox who had been in the underworld for more than 10 years. When he saw the expressions of these 3 people, he already knew what was going on. There were a total of 5 votes. Xiao Saburo and Akakawa Chuangsha naturally voted for the latter. Therefore, only when Raito, Tessa, and Kai Yang voted for Raito would there be such an unbelievable result. However, from the attitude of the 2 leaders of the Black Snake Alliance and Big Dipper Alliance towards Raito, it was impossible for them to vote for Raito. Instead, they had been leaning towards President Akakawa's side. However, the truth was better than guessing. From the final voting results, Tessa and Kai Yang's actions of leaning towards President Akakawa's side were 100% just a performance to fool people. And most importantly, it was actually Kai Yang who proposed the secret vote, and Tessa who proposed the written agreement in advance. These 2 actions seemed to be helping President Akakawa to stabilize the situation, but in fact, they were digging a hole for the other 2 to jump into. Voting to resolve this, right? We have 3 people on our side, and you have 2 people on your side. Are you going to vote? Let's see which side has more people in the end. After throwing, you realized that you had been tricked, right? It doesn't matter. The deed of formation of the Runxia Alliance has your signatures and fingerprints. Do you want to deny it? Would he still want to work in this industry in the future? In this way, Raito played the bad guy, while Tessa and Kai Yang played the good guy. It could be said that Shujo Orokawa and Shujo Saburo were completely played in the palm of their hands. This wasn't just a case of losing the wife and losing the soldier, but losing the entire family's life. You three. What a scheme, what a scheme. After noticing this, Subaru couldn't help but point at the three extreme Dao leaders who were sitting at the table with a happy and content expression. He simply wished he could grab them and hang them on the spot. What is he talking about? Why don't I understand? Tessa shrugged with a smile, looking innocent. I don't know. Weren't you very keen on voting before? Now that the results were out, what should he do? Can't afford to lose. Kai Yang was even more direct. He clasped his hands together and looked at Subaru with a sharp gaze, as if he dared to say no, he would open a hole in his head. This. You. Raito Kiri, is this your plan? While Subarang was speechless from these two's retorts, President Huang Chuan, who was almost paralyzed in his chair, slowly raised his head, looking towards that extreme Dao young master whose expression had unknowingly become extremely calm. From the moment Raito Kiri entered this room, he gave off a feeling of brainless and unhappy. He was arrogant and crazy, and his expression was very exaggerated. One look and one could tell that he was a stinky brat without any foundation. But after everything was settled, Raito returned to his usual calm expression, making people feel that this guy was even a bit unfathomable. If you don't want people to know, don't do it in the first place. This old saying is very reasonable, right, President Orokawa? At this point, the corners of Long Do's mouth curled up, revealing an expression of the plan has worked. Indeed, if you don't want people to know, don't do it in the first place. In this information age, a lot of things couldn't be hidden just because you wanted to. Especially when Raito Kiri had a group of very powerful companions. 1.5 hours ago, Raito received a letter from the White Tiger Society. There's definitely something wrong with that guy called Orokawa Soyu. There's probably some conspiracy behind this invitation. After explaining the situation to Colored Glaze said firmly on the phone. Raito heard this and asked with some confusion, "Why do you say that? I've seen the president of the White Tiger Society at an event before. He's a piece of trash that talks about benevolence and righteousness, but in fact, he's a piece of trash with a belly full of evil tricks. What kind of hero is he?" When mentioning Orokawa Soyu, Colored Glaze mercilessly scolded him as if she didn't care about that person at all. In fact, that was indeed the case. As the young lady of the Kamiyoshi family, Colored Glaze had seen all kinds of scum since she was young. Anyway, when she walked around those upper-class banquets, she would meet either scum or scum. Therefore, Colored Glaze was very good at identifying scum, and she was also very clear about the relationship between Jidaikai and politicians. Before meeting Raito, Colored Glaze had always thought that all Jidaikai were dogs raised by politicians. They were scum dogs that did some dirty work for the scum that appeared to be working for the people on the surface. The White Tiger Society was obviously this type of scum. Therefore, Orokawa Soyu considered himself as a hero in Jidaikai. This kind of stupid words was more than enough to fool people who didn't know the business, but it was impossible to fool Colored Glaze. After that, Raito immediately called Sensible and asked Sensible to help check the accounts of Orokawa Soyu and the White Tiger Society. He wanted to see their financial situation. From the information that Sensible found, the White Tiger Society's financial situation was quite good. It was so good that it was very surprising. After all, this organization was the same as the Rulong Group. They were not involved in profiteering industries such as anesthetics, firearms, nightclubs, etc. However, the White Tiger Society was much richer than the Rulong Group. In this era, it was very difficult for a Jidaikai who didn't do these dirty jobs to survive. Just look at how poor the Rulong Group was before Raito came. Between money and face, one could only choose one. Of course, there was no reason to accept both. However, The White Tiger Society was able to accept both. In particular, their president, Orokowa Soyu, had a very vague financial source. Even Sensible found it very difficult to find out. The accounts that send money to Orokowa Soyu are very complicated. I asked Gao Yuan to probe through his channels. In the end, it pointed to a few non-profit organizations. Non-profit organizations? What's that? It's a type of organization that doesn't belong to any government or established by any country. It's usually defined as a non-profit public welfare organization, such as environmental protection, human rights, and environmental protection. It sounds very high and mighty. It's just a saying. Most of these organizations talk about activism, but in their hearts, they only think about business. Their purpose is either to make money or to mess with people. They have a lot of money behind them. You'd be stupid to believe them. Money behind them. In other words, the person who sent money to that old man is the one behind him? Yes, and this money behind him is also supporting another Jidaikai organization called Psychedelic Soburo. Psychedelic Soburo? Wasn't that the trashy Jidaikai that sold anesthetics and banned drugs? After hearing this news, Raito had a new understanding of Orokowa Soyu. This old man used the name of chivalry to fool people in Tokyo, but he actually had a big money backer behind him. Moreover, he had the same boss as Psychedelic Soburo. What was Psychedelic Soburo? In the words of Mr. Fujiki, it was a complete piece of trash in society. They specialized in selling anesthetics and banned drugs to make huge profits. They were trash that deserved to die 100 times. The White Tiger Gang and Psychedelic Soburo had the same power behind them. In that case, there was a reason why President Orokowa called so many Jidaikai over for a meeting. 5 Jidaikai organizations. 2 of them are one. If the other 3 can't come to an agreement, then the direction of this meeting will be decided by these 2 organizations. At this moment, Colored Glaze suggested, Raito, immediately contact the leaders of the Black Snake Alliance and the Big Dipper Alliance. Tell them about the account problems that Sensible and Gao Yuan investigated. Also, ask them to advance and retreat together in this meeting. Is it enough to advance and retreat together? Should we do something else? If I'm not wrong, Orokowa will probably ask for an alliance or something. At this time, we must do this, and do it again. Just like this, under Colored Glaze's arrangement, Raito successfully got in touch with Tessa and Kai Yang. After talking for a while, they came to an agreement about this meeting. After all, the leaders of the 2 Jidaikai organizations weren't idiots. When they knew that Orokowa and Soburo were one family, they naturally understood why the Chivalry Alliance was proposed by the 2 of them. Just as Long Do expected, these 2 fellows were planning to drag us down with them. Understanding this, Tessa winked at Kai Yang and began the following series of performances. In short, the leader of the Chivalry Alliance is now me. No one has any objections to this, right? After the vote for the leader, Raito slowly stood up from his chair and said to the 2 losers, Orokowa Tsunori and Soburo, with a smile. Without waiting for their reply, Raito continued with a smile, of course, no objections. After all, the agreement is here. Whoever dares to object will become the enemy of the entire Jidaikai world. I guarantee in the name of the Chivalry Alliance that they will die a horrible death. Chapter 188. It's over. It's over. After hearing Long Do's arrogant words, Subaru's forehead couldn't help but drip with sweat. Why? Why did it turn out like this? It's us, it's us. We were the ones who plotted against them first. Whether it's the secret collusion, the plan, or the meeting, we were the ones who came first. But why did it turn out like this? Why did we become the ones who were plotted against? Shaosaburo did not expect the situation to turn out like this. What should I do now? The Runxia Alliance had been formed. Everyone had signed their names and even left their handprints on the formation document. If he went back on his words now, then Psychedelic Saburo and White Tiger Gang would have no place in the entire Extreme Dao. Xiao Saburo was sweating more and more as he thought about this. His clothes were soaked. Just as Xiao Saburo was at a loss of what to do, Akuragawa took a deep breath and said with a smile, "Very good. Since young Master Raito has been elected as the leader, then we can only follow his lead." Raito smiled and gave Akuragawa a thumbs up. As expected of Akuragawa. "You're so generous. You're able to let go of things. Leader, you're too kind. To celebrate the formation of the Ranchia Alliance, let's have a good time here." Clap clap. As soon as Akuragawa finished speaking, he clapped his hands and signaled the people outside to come over. This is the signal to attack. Is Akuragawa going to risk his life? After hearing these two claps, Subaru suddenly felt all the hair on his body stand up, and a cold current enveloped him from head to toe. At the end of the Ranchia Alliance plan, there was an emergency plan that could only be used if there was no other way. That was to call people in and kill everyone here. Before the meeting started, Akuragawa had already gathered hundreds of elite fighters from the White Tiger Gang. They were armed with all kinds of weapons and even guns. They were lying in ambush in the Star Python apartment. No matter how good Raito was at fighting, in the face of a group of gun-wielding Extreme Dao, he could only surrender. This was Orokawa Genesis' final killing move. There was a well-known unspoken rule on this street, and that was that even if there was a conflict, no weapons could be used. Otherwise, one would be spurned and besieged by all the Extreme Dao experts. Therefore, it was even more forbidden to use force in the Star Python apartments. Even if one wanted to use force, they could only use their fists to solve the problem. Otherwise, they could forget about continuing in this industry. However, when he was preparing his plan, he didn't seem to have thought about this unspoken rule at all. Anyway, he didn't plan to stay in Extreme Dao anymore. He already had plans to leave. As long as I organize the League of Heroes and hand it over to that lord to manage, I can leave this small island with turbid air and head to the fresh air of free America to live a brand new life with my family. In order to achieve this goal, Orokawa Chuang didn't care about the rules of the underworld and directly attacked. And the current situation was the final moment where the old president was ready to risk his life. Raito and the other two Extreme Dao leaders' response was far beyond Orokawa Chuang's expectations. The league was successfully established, but he didn't get the position of the leader. Wasn't this just making a wedding dress for someone else? At this point, he could only kill Raito, Kai Yang, and Tessa and use force to unify these Extreme Dao groups. Although this wasn't in line with his initial expectations, Orokawa Chuang had no other choice now. After all, the position of the leader fell to Raito, which was equivalent to sentencing this old man and his family to death. Might as well go all out. If it really didn't work, then everyone would die together. Who's afraid of who? Clap clap. With this thought, Orokawa Chuang clapped his hands and signaled the group of people lying in ambush outside to rush in and kill the three Extreme Dao leaders. A second passed, and there was no response from outside. 5 seconds passed, and there was no response from outside. 10 seconds passed, and there was still no response from outside. What's going on? Why did the people I arranged? What's wrong? President Orokawa, didn't you say that you wanted us to have fun here and drink together? At this moment, Raito stood up slowly and walked to Orokawa Chuang's side. When Raito came close to him, a hint of panic flashed in the old president's eyes, and his body shrunk slightly. But even so, he still forced himself to say, This, maybe my people are distracted. I'll go out and urge them. No need to go. I know where they are. Raito said as he took out a small tablet from his inner pocket. He casually turned on the tablet and transferred the image to the position where the surveillance camera was recording. The moment the image appeared on the tablet, Orokawa Chuang felt cold all over and his scalp went numb. Because in that image, The group of White Tiger Gang subordinates that he had arranged were piled together like garbage. Almost all of them were tied up tightly with ropes. When the old hero was dumbfounded, Raito reached out and patted his face and smiled. How about it? President Orokawa, why don't you show me what you have? Let's see if you have more trump cards or I have more trump cards. You. Who exactly are you? My people have already controlled all the surveillance cameras in the Star Python apartment. You don't think that we won't find out when so many of your people come in from the area you control, right? There were thousands of surveillance cameras inside the Star Python apartment, and these cameras were also managed by the 5 Extreme Dao regions. That was, each Extreme Dao region would monitor an area. Before the meeting began, Orokawa Chuang asked his people to sneak up from the surveillance area controlled by Psychedelic Soburo and the White Tiger Gang. He thought that he had done it very discreetly, but in fact, he had already hacked all the cameras in the apartment. There was nothing that the current RU Long group could not see. Therefore, after cutting off the vision of Psychedelic Soburo and the White Tiger Gang, the Rulong group cooperated with the Big Dipper Alliance and the Black Snake Alliance to wipe out all the enemies in the apartment. It was 3 against 2, not to mention that one side had come prepared, while the other side had been attacked passively. All kinds of cameras, radios, and cell phone communications had been cut off. In an instant, they had turned from an organized army into a group of scattered soldiers. With such a huge gap, the conflict between the two sides naturally started and ended quickly. Boom. The next moment, the door of the room was kicked open from the outside. Many apex cultivators dressed in black rushed in with guns and blades in their hand. They pointed their guns at Orokawa Chuang, Skinny Soburo, and Fat Soburo. Obviously, when the voting was still going on in the room, the battle outside had already ended, and it ended with Raito, Kai Yang, and Tessa winning. After a while, we will take over your territories and assets. From today onwards, Psychedelic Saburo and the White Tiger Gang will no longer exist, and only 3 of the 5 Extreme Dao in Tokyo are left. After leaving Orokawa Chuang, who was scared out of his wits, Raito, Kai Yang, and Tessa came to the front of the group of subordinates and looked at the few bastards who were forced to the corner and trembling. It's over, it's all over. When Orokawa Chuang realized this, he couldn't help but kneel on the ground, and at the same time, a strange smile appeared on his face. He. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. He was laughing, crying, and drooling. His body was constantly trembling, and the originally solemn kimono on his lower body had a trace of yellow water stain. He looked like an old madman who had reached the end of his road. From a certain perspective, Orokawa Chuang had given up thinking. Because he knew that no matter how he thought, it was useless, and it was impossible to change this desperate situation. But Skinny Saburo, who was hiding behind Fat Saburo and leaning against the wall with this old man, didn't think so. He didn't give up on his life. Damn it. I knew this old man was unreliable. In the end, I can only rely on myself. Although I don't want Fat Saburo to eat that thing, it seems like there's no other way, or else we will all die here. Looking at the dozens of guns in front of him, Skinny Saburo could only pat the back of his brother in front of him and whispered, "Fat Saburo, take that thing out and eat it." That thing? Fat Saburo turned his head and asked in confusion. "It's the paper I gave you before. Hurry up." "Oh, this thing." Suddenly, Fat Saburo reached out and tore his sleeve, and took out a piece of paper that looked like a matchbox. The paper looked like some kind of ink paper, and it was stained with an ominous black color, giving people a strange feeling. No matter how you look at it, this thing didn't look like something that should be eaten, but Fat Saburo swallowed it without hesitation. Something's wrong. Seeing this guy's action, everyone present felt that something was wrong. So Kai Yang shouted without hesitation, "Shoot! Kill them! Bang! Bang! Bang!" With the leader's order, the dozens of black suits in front immediately pulled the trigger of their guns, and fatal bullets were fired at the 3 people in the corner. Woo 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 woo. But as the gunshots sounded, Fat Saburo also reached out his big hand and grabbed the table in front of him, and used the huge round table as a shield in front of the 3 people. Bang! Boom! But how could such a table block the bullets of the guns? After at most 1 or 2 seconds, the table exploded from the bullets, and Orokowa Chuang, who was panicking, was directly shot into a hornet's nest. However, although Akanagawa Chuang was killed on the spot, the huge figure that appeared with the strange smoke was still standing straight under the storm of bullets. Chapter 189. Smoke. Why is there smoke? Moreover, this strange smoke seemed to be coming from that big guy's body. Just when the round table was smashed, and the body of Orokowa Chuang fell to the ground, everyone looked at the burly figure standing in the same place. One of the 2 leaders of psychedelic Soburo, Fatty Soburo, originally had a physique that was far stronger than ordinary people. He was born with divine strength, and with the help of a large number of forbidden drugs, he looked even more tall and strong. His body was incomparably burly, like a mighty and domineering king statue. However, when the dozens of bullets smashed the round table and bombarded the huge body, a strange scene appeared. Huff, 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 huff. At this time, Fatty Saburo's hands were in front of his body, using his thick arms to cover the weakness of his face, and his lower body was standing very steadily, slowly exhaling. The dozens of bullets that were fired at him just now almost all hit his body, and no less than 20 bullets were hit. Even if most of these bullets only hit the arms, body, and legs, it was already a state that ordinary people could not withstand. However, after being hit by so many bullets, Fatty Subaru's body emitted a dense fog. It was as if a strange heat was rising from every pore of his body, causing the fatty's skin to turn red. Thump, thump, thump. At the same time, his heart also issued a terrifying beating sound like a drum. The sound could be heard clearly even from more than 10 meters away, and it was not like the heartbeat of a normal human. Ding! Ding-ling-ling-ling. Just when everyone was dumbfounded looking at the huge body that suddenly changed, a strange crisp sound came from the ground. It was bullets, dozens of bullets that just hit Fatty Saburo's body. These bullets that hit his body that suddenly became several times stronger did not go too deep, but only stopped outside the skin and muscles, and were immediately pushed out by the continuously expanding muscles. Unknowingly, many parts of the man's body quietly underwent a terrifying change. His height had increased from 1.8 meters to about 2 meters. His arms, neck, legs, and even his torso had obviously become thicker. His muscles had also begun to bulge out of his clothes. He did not look like a body of flesh and blood at all. Instead, he looked more like bricks. What monster? What's wrong with this person? Seeing the sudden changes on Fatty Saburo's body, everyone in the room was stunned. Even the experienced Kai Yang and Tessa could not help but widen their eyes, with a look of disbelief. Indeed, what's wrong with this person? Or to ask a more direct question, is this guy really a human? To be able to withstand a handgun bullet, completely unnatural heartbeat, breathing, and the steam from the pores. All of this made Subaru look like a monster like the Hulk on TV. Moreover, it was accompanied by a strong sense of unreality as if a monster on TV had come to the real world. As for this series of sudden changes, Long Do was definitely the one who understood what had happened the most out of everyone present. Before Pang Saburo ate the black paper, his personal attributes in the hooligan analyzer were as follows: name, Inada Saburo, age, 32 years old, attribute, wisdom LVL 1, physique LVL 4, courage LVL 3, insight LVL 2, charm LVL 1. After eating that black paper, and after his entire body underwent a complete transformation, his personal attributes became like this: name, Inada Saburo, age, 32 years old, attribute, wisdom LVL 1, physique LVL 5, courage LVL 5, insight LVL 1, charm LVL 1. How should he describe it? This guy had literally become a monster. Not only did this guy's physical ability increase from LVL 4 to LVL 5, reaching the highest level of superhuman realm. Furthermore, Fatty Saburo's courage directly jumped 2 times, from LVL 3 to LVL 5. What is the concept of LVL5 courage? This is the true meaning, not fearing the heavens or the earth. Even if the heavenly emperor came, I would still dare to ride on top of his head and shit. Judging from Fatty Saburo's situation, it is impossible for him to have such terrifying courage, unless he is in a state of extreme excitement, which is also the state of forbidden drug enhancement. Therefore, the root of all these changes is undoubtedly the black paper that this guy just ate. His current rapid breathing, rapid heartbeat, abnormal muscle strength and other conditions are obviously caused by some kind of forbidden drug or super forbidden drug. Forbidden drug, in fact, this term is not just a simple drug, but a general term for all forbidden drugs that can cause abnormalities in the human body. At first, the place where humans used forbidden drugs is mostly on the battlefield where flesh and blood splatters everywhere. Soldiers will take a series of synthetic drugs that have a significant central nervous system stimulating effect to reduce their fear of the battlefield. And with the continuous advancement of science, the place where forbidden drugs are used has become a sports field, but this does not prevent some people from secretly researching some drugs that can make people become superhuman in a short time. Clearly, the forbidden drug that Subaru was using right now wasn't something as simple as strengthening his muscles. Instead, it was an even more tyrannical Superman drug. This drug had directly increased his physique from international warrior to extreme Superman. After consuming this drug, it will bring about an extraordinary monster state. Of course, such an overbearing forbidden drug, the after-effects of consuming it are also quite serious. But now Fatty Saburo is too lazy to care so much. Very good, Hell Butterfly has already shown its effect. After seeing the huge change in Fatty Saburo's body, Skinny Saburo, who is hiding behind him, nodded, laughed and said, "Fatty, let's go first." "Ooh, let's go." After hearing his boss's words, Fatty Saburo, who is gasping for breath, obviously somewhat delirious, suddenly widened his bloodshot eyes, and swung his thick right arm towards the wall beside him. Boom! Following a loud bang, the concrete wall, which was at least 30 centimeters thick, was smashed into smithereens by the terrifying monster's fists. Dust and gravel powder filled the room. After punching a hole in the wall, Fatty Saburo reached out and grabbed his boss, and jumped out of the hole in the wall. Jumping out of the room. The direction of the wall is the direction of the window, there is nothing outside, only the vertical courtyard of Star Python apartment, which is hundreds of meters high. Although Raito and the rest are currently staying in room 408, this room 408 is actually a code word for Star Python apartment. The actual location is not on the 4th floor, but on the 18th floor. With such a high vertical distance like the 18th floor, if a normal creature falls, it will definitely be smashed to pieces. But right after Fatty Subaru jumped out with his big brother, his gorilla-like thick arms directly grabbed onto the outer wall of the apartment building. Creak! The 5 fingers that can almost crush steel penetrated the outer wall of the apartment, as if the wall is soft like bubbles under this guy's hand. Relying on the cushioning force of the wall with one hand, Fatty Saburo brought Skinny Saburo all the way down from the 18th floor like a monster in a movie, leaving behind 5 deep claw marks on the outer wall of the apartment. No. No way. Is this guy really a human? Suddenly, Tessa, who came to the window and watched the 2 guys slide down, swallowed her saliva. At the same time, she couldn't help but reach out and pinch her slender and smooth thighs, wondering if she is dreaming. How is it possible? In the real world, how can someone directly jump down from the 18th floor and rely on one hand to hold the wall to cushion the impact until landing? It is just like shooting a Hulk movie without much Hulk. Just when everyone didn't know what to do, Long Do silently came to the hole that was blasted by Pang San Lang. Kai Yang, send someone to follow me and those 2 guys, absolutely can't let them escape. Send someone. Wait. Didn't you? After hearing Raito's words, Kai Yang couldn't help but look at him and wanted to say, "Aren't you here? Why did you send someone to follow you and those 2 guys?" But halfway through Kai Yang's words, Raito's figure didn't hesitate to jump out of the hole. From the 18th floor in the air, he chased down. Even if the enemy is a monster with LV5 physique, Raito didn't feel fear, he even had a feeling of eagerness. This guy is looking for, but almost everyone who saw this scene almost wanted to say Raito, this guy is looking for death. But when Raito's body flew to the outside of the apartment, he used a more elegant way than Fatty Soburo to fly down the stairs. His slender body nimbly landed in the air, one foot stepped on the air conditioner on the 17th floor. Bang! The air conditioner that was stepped on made a muffled sound, but it didn't fall down because of this step. Whoosh! Then Raito once again jumped to the side, landed on the air conditioner on the 16th floor, and repeated this action. In the eyes of the people upstairs, this young master of the Rulon group was like a Spider-Man in a cartoon, nimbly moving around the air conditioner on the outside wall of the apartment, constantly quickly chasing down the Soburo brothers. An 18-story high-rise building, as long as one misstep, the entire vertical space could fall to their death. In such a dangerous area, relying on the air conditioner to continuously jump down, Raito's entire movement seemed so relaxed, as if he was walking on flat ground, as if he wasn't performing an amazing acrobatic performance, but strolling in his own corridor. Bang! Just as Long Do was about to land on the ground, Fatty San Lang, who was not far away, also fell to the ground with a bang. Chapter 190. Boom. Accompanied by a loud noise, the Star Python apartment at night seemed to tremble. When Pang Subaru's huge body that was at least 300 kilograms smashed onto the ground, it actually directly smashed a crack that was at least 10 meters long on the concrete floor. It could be seen how strong the impact was. But even so, Pang Subaru's unnaturally muscular legs seemed to be completely fine. There was neither fracture nor pain. Or it could be said that he already couldn't feel pain. After landing, looking at Raito who was chasing behind like a ghost, Pang Subaru who was grabbed by Pang Subaru quickly shouted, "Go! Go quickly! Run as fast as you can! Oh! Okay." Although Pang Subaru was currently in a berserk state, he could still barely understand his big brother's words. Therefore, his huge body immediately took a step forward, like a wild rhinoceros. He rushed out of the Star Python apartment. Pang Subaru rushed out of a wall in front of him, but he didn't care about it. Boom! Following a burst of explosive sound, Pang Subaru's shoulder hit the inside of the wall, completely smashing the thick wall into pieces. Moreover, his figure also quickly rushed out to the street outside. This guy's speed is so fast, this kind of physical ability is simply not something that a normal creature can have. If he rushed into the crowd, it would be troublesome. Although there weren't many people on the street outside the apartment, but at this time, there were still some people scattered around. Ah! What is that thing? Seeing the huge body break through the wall and rush into the street, the surrounding pedestrians suddenly let out a cry of surprise. At the same time, not far away, the two patrolling policemen also saw this guy's rampage and quickly rushed over. What is this? Did the gorilla run out of the zoo? Seeing Pang Subaru rushing in this direction, the young patrolling policeman immediately shouted, "Stop, who are you? Quickly stop." But the old patrolling policeman at the side quickly took out his gun and shouted, "Quickly take out your gun, or else both of us will be finished." That guy's mental state is abnormal. The old patrol officer, who had been on this street for a long time, could tell at a glance that Pang Saban was in a manic state where it was impossible for him to listen. He was like a crazy person who had taken too much drugs. In addition, this guy had a physique that was comparable to a gorilla's. If he continued to run around on the streets like this, the damage he could cause would be unimaginable. Fire! So when Fatty Subaru rushed to the distance of only 10 meters away from the two patrol officers, the old patrol officer shouted while pulling the trigger in his hand. Bang! What the hell? The two pistols opened fire at the same time, and the street was flooded with deafening explosions and sparks. But even so, the behemoth that was hit by the bullet didn't stop charging. Instead, It continued to charge towards the two men like an enraged beast. Clearly, with the support of LV-5 physique, ordinary handgun bullets had no effect on the current Pang Sanlang. Unless they hit his eyes or other vital points, they would just tickle his steel body. Murmur MIA. Just when the two patrol officers thought they were going to be crushed into meat paste, a slender figure rushed out from the side like lightning, ancient Bajikan, Iron Mountain lean. In the next second, Raito stepped on the ground. Using the tremor kick, he twisted his body and slammed his shoulder into the left side of Pang Sabin's abdomen. Bang! When the two collided fiercely, a strong explosion sounded. The feeling wasn't like two living bodies colliding. Instead, it was like two trucks colliding at full speed. After the collision, the two unlucky patrolmen were also sent flying by the strong impact of the collision and fainted on the ground 4 or 5 meters away. This collision was earth-shattering. Raito's Iron Mountain lean was strong enough to send a dozen people flying. But when he collided with Pang Sabin's body, he felt as if he collided with an iron wall. At that moment, Raito felt a pain in his shoulder. The strong impact forced him back a dozen meters before he could stabilize his body and land on the ground. Of course, no matter how strong Pang Sabin's body was, after being hit by Raito, he still fell to the other side. He was like a soccer ball that was kicked away. He rolled on the ground until he reached the lawn of the park a dozen meters away. Apart from Pang Sanlang, who had been caught in his hand, was also sent flying. After Raito's Iron Mountain lean landed, the skinny guy felt as if he was hit by a truck. He fell to the ground in a daze. He saw stars and his head was bleeding. What the hell is going on? Before Pang Sabin could react, a hand like an iron clamp had already grabbed his throat and lifted his body from the ground. It was Raito. After all, Raito was the one who initiated the attack. The impact he received was not as strong as the other two brothers. So he quickly rushed over and grabbed the culprit's neck. He turned around and ran toward a remote factory outside the park. Let go of my big brother. After seeing the scene of his elder brother being taken away, Fatty Subaru also hurriedly got up from the ground. His eyes were red like an enraged bull as he chased after Long Ju. Just like this, the two sides went from one running and one chasing to one chasing and one running. That place should not be a problem. I have to control him as soon as possible. I can't let this guy continue to act recklessly. As he ran, Raito raised his head and looked at the nearby factory under the illumination of the night. It was especially quiet. Because it was already night, the factory was quiet. There was no one inside. Obviously, it was the best place to deal with this fat guy. Arriving at the interior of the factory, Long Do lifted the neck of Xiao Saburo, who was about to be strangled to death by him, and directly threw him up, letting him fall on a platform that was more than 10 meters high. Big brother. Pang Sabin, who followed behind, quickly wanted to save him. But Raito's figure had already arrived in front of him. In an instant, a fist suddenly flashed in front of Pang Sabin. Then he heard a crisp sound in front of him. Bursts of blood spurted out from the fat nose. Facing this monster who was obviously not human anymore after eating the drug, Raito obviously did not have any intention of holding back. He directly raised his hand and used an iron palm. It mercilessly smashed on Pang Sabin's nose. How could the fragile nose resist Raito's iron palm? After this palm, Pang Sabin's nose was almost completely broken. A broken nose would cause a large amount of blood loss. Moreover, this kind of injury would also cause severe pain. It would greatly reduce the enemy's fighting spirit. As if Unexpectedly, Pang Sabin, who received this heavy blow, did not have any reaction at all. His face was full of blood, his nose was crooked, but he immediately let out a beast-like cry. He reached out his hand and grabbed towards Raito's direction. Even with a broken nose, he did not even blink. Sure enough, this guy could not feel pain now. After dodging this fatal grab, Raito once again sized up this body whose skin had turned into a strange red color. It was gradually becoming less and less like a human. Modified human, enhanced human, or Frankenstein, this was Pang Sabin's current situation. The only way to stop this behemoth was to kill it. Even knocking it out would be difficult. After all, this guy's brain was probably secreting all kinds of hormones to ensure that it wouldn't faint. Even so, Raito did not feel that he would lose. After all, although Pang Sabin's physical strength was heaven-defying, he still did not know how to use martial arts. If a martial arts master like Saichu Ryudo had LV5 physique, he could almost instantly kill the current Raito. Or it could be said that he could instantly kill anyone. However, Pang Sabin was still far from it. Kill. I will kill you. After a series of beast-like roars, Pang Sabin rushed over with a posture that gave people a sense of great pressure. Because of his super strong physical strength, this rushing momentum was like a human tank. Even Raito did not dare to face it head-on. Thus, he dodged to the side. At the same time, he bent his body and used all his strength to kick the inner side of Pang Sabin's thick knee. This kick could be said to be extremely tricky. No matter what kind of monster it was, after being kicked from the inner side of the knee, it could only kneel forward. Bang! After the monster knelt on one knee, Long Do took the opportunity to press forward and quickly launched a storm of attacks. His pair of slender and powerful arms were like two soft whips filled with mercury. Coupled with the ancient Bajikan fist technique, in a short 2 seconds, he consecutively punched a dozen times. His attacks were extremely fierce. Because he did not have any apprehensions, Raito's every attack was accompanied by a sound of breaking air as it solidly kicked Pang Sabin's vital points. Furthermore, it produced a loud sound of flesh and bone colliding. With Raito's current strength, if such a violent and murderous attack landed on an ordinary person, even if that person had 10 lives, it would not be enough to survive. Liver, abdomen, throat, back of head and heart. This was the first time that Raito did not hesitate to attack these vital points. But even if he attacked these vital points, he was still unable to cause any damage to Pang Sabin. Although Raito already felt that this guy had suffered serious injuries, but he always felt that no matter how he attacked, he was always missing that final kick, unable to let his attacks reach the deepest part. Good heavens, this guy is too durable, right? This is simply. Just when Raito's continuous attacks were about to be interrupted after a few seconds, a thick arm seized this opportunity and hugged his waist. Hey! Hee, cat! Here! Come! Obviously, Pang Sabin had been waiting for this moment. Although his consciousness was not very clear, the rich fighting experience was still engraved in every cell of this body. Taking advantage of the opponent's previous attack, and the short time before the opponent's new attack, the bulging muscular arm had already hugged Raito's waist. Then, he suddenly began to exert force inward. Go to hell! At this time, Fatty Subarang's thick arm tried to squeeze and break Long Do's lumbar spine. The latter immediately felt a tearing sensation as if his body was about to be bent into a U shape. Bastard! You forced me. But Raito would not allow himself to be captured without a fight. Before his waist was broken, he raised his empty left hand and a small Uzi submachine gun appeared in his hand. Of all the martial arts, this was the submachine gun assassination technique. After taking out his Uzi submachine gun from the equipment slot, Raito directly stuffed the muzzle into Pang Sabin's nostrils and pulled the trigger without hesitation. Chapter 191. Tut tut tut. Tut 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 tut. The 9mm bullet directly exploded in Subaru's nostrils. The explosive force spread upward along the nasal bone, the frontal process of the maxilla, the frontal nasal process, and other parts of the body, all the way to the frontal bone and even the brain. No matter how hard Subaru's body was now covered with steel-like muscles, the internal bones and organs would not change. Bang! As the bullet exploded in his head, the huge body finally fell backward. At the same time, the arm that was holding Long Do also lost the huge force that should have been attached to it. Hey! Hee! While falling, the man's face still had a strange smile. Coupled with his face full of blood and bones, the scene was particularly horrifying. But no matter how horrifying it was, Subaru was still a human. The bullet directly went through the nose and into the brain. This kind of injury was not something a Frankenstein could withstand. It was a real fatal injury. Therefore, after this big guy fell to the ground, his eyes rolled back, and his breathing and heartbeat stopped. He had completely seen a ghost. Finally. It's finally over. Just when Subaru's terrifying body fell to the ground and didn't get up again, Raito couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. He relaxed his mind and sat down. It had to be said that the battle just now could be said to be the most difficult battle Raito had experienced so far. Although the battle with Saito was actually more dangerous, it didn't mean that it was difficult. After all, the battle ended quickly and didn't bring too much torture. But the battle with Subaru was completely different. The battle with this monster could be said to be enjoyable for Raito from both the physical and mental aspects. He was forced to the limit in both aspects. The strange body that seemed to have no effect no matter how he attacked, and the terrifying murderous aura that was more ferocious than a beast, made Raito feel a lot of pressure. Strictly speaking, the current Subaru was simply not a human, but a monster that couldn't be defeated and wasn't afraid of death. These strange creatures were not something that could be dealt with by fists and feet. It was something that demon hunters or zombie Taoists should do. If Long Do hadn't used the unethical submachine gun assassination technique to shoot out his nostrils, he might have been the one lying on the ground right now. It hurts. My waist almost broke. Phew. Suddenly, Raito lifted his shirt and looked at his waist. There was a deep purple mark on the back of his waist. It was like a huge python was deeply imprinted on his skin. However, this was still considered good. If Subaru had been strangled for a while longer, Long Do's waist and spine would have been completely broken. At that time, he would have to pay another 1 million yuan. Da. It's here. Come here quickly. Just as Raito was sitting on the ground to rest, Kai Yang rushed into the factory with his men. Because they planned to fight the monster that couldn't be penetrated by handguns, the members of the Big Dipper Alliance had already brought a lot of heavy firepower weapons. From shotguns to fully automatic rifles, to howitzers and even rocket launchers, these were the real weapons that the Big Dipper Alliance had. They looked very powerful. After all, this extreme do specialized in firearms. The firearms in their hands could be said to be the best on the island. If a fight really broke out, it would not be a joke. But now, no matter how powerful the heavy firepower was, it was useless because the monster that Kai Yang and his men were going to kill was now lying on the ground and turned into a huge monster corpse. What? It was already done. Relying on him alone? The moment he rushed into the factory, Kai Yang looked at Subaru who was lying on the ground and Raito who was sitting next to him rubbing his waist. He couldn't help but have a look of disbelief. God, this was a monster that couldn't be penetrated by handguns. Raito Kiri actually killed it by himself. This combat power was simply. Should he consider joining the Avengers or something? After seeing this ally, Raito also extended his hand and smiled. Brother Kai Yang, can you give me a hand? Amazing, I'm impressed. Kai Yang walked over and helped Raito up and praised him with a tone of admiration. As everyone knew, the leader of the Big Dipper Alliance, Kai Yang, was a very taciturn tough guy. He rarely praised people, And he used this kind of tone to praise people. This was simply unbelievable to his men. After Kai Yang brought people over, the next thing was simple. Fatty Subaru had caused such a huge ruckus just now. The Metropolitan Police Department would definitely be frantically sending people over here. But before they arrived, Raito and Kai Yang had already taken away all the bodies of Subaru and Subaru. Not a single hair was left, so the police didn't find anything. Then, on the night of the same day, the entire underground world of Tokyo ushered in a wave of unprecedented perilous waves. The story of the White Tiger Gang and psychedelic Subaru attempting to use the name of an alliance to murder the other 3 gang leaders was spread all over the internet. Almost the entire underground world knew about the dirty deeds of these people. The name of chivalry collapsed overnight. Karakawa Soyuki went from a well-regarded big shot to a scum that was despised overnight. It seemed like his name would go down in history. At the same time, the Rulone Group, Big Dipper Alliance, and Black Snake Alliance led the 3 gangs to attack the headquarters of the White Tiger Gang and psychedelic Subaru. With the death or capture of Orokawa Gensu and the Soburo brothers, the 2 extreme Dao organizations were like a group of dragons without a leader. Moreover, they were despised in name, causing them to be utterly defeated in the blink of an eye. When the sun rose the next day, the situation of the 5 gangs in Tokyo had completely changed. Most of the members of the White Tiger Gang who didn't know the truth were taken in by Raito and became non-staff members of the Rulone Group. The members of the psychedelic Subaru were either killed or expelled. They were banned from entering the Tokyo area. From Raito's point of view, most of the members of the White Tiger Gang were still men. They weren't hopeless. They were only confused by Karakawa Soyuki's chivalry before. That was why they followed this boss for so long. Moreover, they didn't do too many evil things before. They were the same as the Rulone Group. However, the group of drug addicts in the psychedelic Sanlang were different. This organization was originally focused on selling all kinds of drugs. The internal members were naturally drug addicts and drug addicts. Each and every one of them had shifty eyes and pretended to be ghosts. For this group of garbage, Raito didn't plan to be soft at all. It was impossible to take them into his team. It was better to throw them into the Tokyo Bay as non-recyclable garbage to feed the fish. Therefore, the Tokyo Bay was particularly noisy that night. Groups of drug addicts and drug addicts were drowned in the bay with cement. Before they died, their mouths were stuffed with their favorite drugs. It was a worthy death. After everything calmed down, at noon the next day, Raito, Kai Yang, and Tessa, the 2 leaders of the gang, enjoyed the wine that the old guy Karakawa Soyuki kept in the base of the White Tiger Gang. Thank you so much for your help this time. Let me propose a toast to you too. On the table, Raito opened a bottle of aged white wine and filled it to the brim for Kai Yang and Tessa. Then, he raised his glass to toast them. It had to be said that the reason why this operation was so smooth was not only because Raito and the Rulone Group were strong enough, but also because of the cooperation of the Big Dipper Alliance and the Black Snake Alliance. Don't say that. This time, we should be basking in your glory. After raising her glass, Tessa covered her mouth and smiled. Her face was flushed, and she looked refreshed. After a night of property confiscation, the 2 large gang organizations, the White Tiger Gang and the psychedelic Subaru, were completely disintegrated and annexed. Naturally, the 3 gangs that took action reaped a lot of benefits. This included the addition of personnel, various assets and real estate, many connections, fame, and so on. It could be said that other than the Rulone Group, the Big Dipper Alliance and the Black Snake Alliance also earned a lot. This made Tessa smile from ear to ear early in the morning. At this time, the more she looked at Raito, the more she liked him. Indeed, if we let that fake hero's plan go smoothly, let alone taking advantage, I'm afraid we won't even be able to keep our own belongings. Speaking of this, Kai Yang couldn't help but sigh. In fact, before yesterday, Kai Yang still thought that Karakawa Soyuki was a well-deserved hero, but he didn't expect him to be a complete hypocrite, a piece of trash in the human world. If it wasn't for Raito seeing through his scheme and reaching an agreement with the other two gangs in time, the Big Dipper alliance would really have ended in the end. Then, this Ranshia alliance would really become a game where Shozo Orokawa and the Saburo brothers worked together to harvest the leeks. The Dragon Group, Big Dipper Alliance, and Black Snake Alliance would definitely lose everything. Just like this, because everyone reaped a lot of benefits, the meal could be said to be enjoyable. Raito, Kai Yang, and Tessa drank one cup after another, and the topics of conversation became more and more open. Especially when he found out that Raito, a Japanese devil, could actually speak his native language, Kai Yang was even more delighted. He couldn't wait to become sworn brothers with him on the spot. At the table, Raito also told the two allies the identity of the boss behind the White Tiger Gang and the psychedelic Subaru. After a full day of investigation, Sensible and Gao Yuan finally found out who the boss behind Karakawa Soyuki and the Subaru brothers were. Although the identity of the boss was hidden very well, as long as he moved in broad daylight, he would be exposed sooner or later. And the identity that was finally investigated shocked Raito and the others, because the boss behind the two gangs was actually the wife of the current Wuda Emperor, the current Empress, Cohesion Ya. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.